That's what I'm trying to say to you about there's a official lead as
So how do you get licensed? Well, feels like
absolutely.
holidays for a world.
Welcome, everyone. Tyson, could you lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you everyone for being here. In closed session, we have one action to report. Board voted to approve a settlement agreement with Stephen Roach Accountancy. Under this agreement, Stephen Roach Accountancy will pay the district $15,000. The vote was 5-0 and therefore unanimous. Now it's time for public comment period. Persons may speak on any item that is not listed on the agenda. Speakers are requested to fill out a speaker card and to state their name and address before addressing the board. Individual speakers are asked to limit their comments for any item to not more than 3 minutes to allow anyone who wishes to speak the opportunity to do so. Groups are asked to limit their comments to a total of 10 minutes. The board shall limit the total time public comment to 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. If additional time is needed, public comment will continue after the discussion items. So I have one request card, Charles.
I just want to cordially invite school board members to our annual school board breakfast. It's an event designed to honor our elected board members, new and current, as well as provide an opportunity to learn more about CTA. I have a handout here. I'll give them the copy and she'll pass them down. This event is on February 8, 2014. It begins at 8:30 a.m. and it typically lasts about 2 hours. Many of you have gone. They're a wonderful opportunity, and I look forward to seeing you there.
I don't see any other speaker cards. So we have our employees of the month. I understand that unfortunately they're not unable to be here tonight. But our first employee is Mike Agers. Mike Agers continually demonstrates his unwavering commitment to Orinda Intermediate School and has been an integral part of their sports program. As a PE teacher, Mike is positive and supportive in his interactions with students as he provides a strong curriculum that is engaging for the students. As the athletic director of the Bulldog Sports Program, Mike is responsible for managing 20 different after-school sports, and he does so with aplomb. So far this year, thanks to his dedicated efforts, approximately 500 students have participated in the Bulldog Sports Program. So congratulations to Mike for being certificated employee of the month. I think applause are appropriate in abstention. And Pam Chang, Sleepy Hollow Instructional Assistant. It is with great pleasure that the District acknowledges Sleepy Hollow Instructional Assistant Pam Chang. Pam embodies every quality that we all want in our classified colleagues. She cares deeply about the students, the teachers, and the school. She's absolutely dependable, and if Pam has missed a day of school over the years, no one currently working can remember it. Pam will volunteer for any needed duty or task. She is always kind and concerned about our students and her colleagues. Thank you, Pam, for everything that you do for Sleepy Hollow School and the OUSD. moving to consent calendar, if the board agrees, I was going to propose, there seems to be a fair number of people interested in discussion item A. So if there's consensus, we could perhaps move discussion item A to after action item A. Would that be agreeable?
Sure, that's fine with me.
So our next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. We do have a updated minutes, amended minutes, excuse me. So do we have a motion for the consent calendar?
Well, I'd like, on the minutes, I wanted to go with minutes because there was something else I wanted to suggest be amended. Well,
There's a copy
so
of that.
there it is. I don't know what was amended, and, there was, committee assignments aren't included. I wanted to request that we include those in the minutes.
Okay, so we will pull the minutes A off the consent calendar, and we can put that after item F of the action items.
So Chris, the contract with Goalbook, I don't have any issue with it, except to learn more about it. So, no other board members really need it pulled off. I have a genuine interest to understand the benefit there a little more. I'm not opposed to it at all, but I would love to hear from Brian if anybody else would.
I'd like to hear too. We might as well pull it.
Okay, so we'll put consent item F after consent item A.
Thank you.
I move we adopt the consent calendar, except for items A and F.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That vote was unanimous. So we'll now move to action item A, 2012-2013 annual financial audit report.
So our 2012-13 annual financial audit report was submitted and complete, or we have completed it, submitted, put it that way, to all the required agencies by Chicala and Tokenaga Certified Public Accountants. And tonight we have Paul and Tokenaga in the audience here that will make a presentation to the board on a little summary of the report.
Thank you, Lorraine. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Giaconetti. First, I'd like to thank the district for the opportunity to serve as your auditor for 2012-13 fiscal year. Also, would like to thank Lorraine Farrell, Director of Business Services, and her department for cooperating with us and assisting us in completing the audit. I know it's not always fun to have auditors in the building, but it was they provided us with the information that we needed in order to issue our audit report. So what I'm going to do is basically go over the major sections of the independent auditor's report, and starting with the financial section. On page 2 of the auditor's report is the independent auditor's report, and this is essentially the primary purpose of why the district is audited, is so that the auditor can provide and express an opinion on the financial statements of the district. So basically, our opinion is on page 3, paragraph 2, we issued a qualified opinion, which basically states that except for the effects of the matter described in the basis for qualified opinion paragraph, which is the preceding paragraph, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the aggregate remaining fund information of the Orinda Union School District as of June 30th, 2013. So essentially the reason why the audit report is a qualified opinion is because there are component units of the district, which is described on note 1, page 29, that are legally component units that do not issue financial statements. And we basically audited the financials of the district only, and not those of the legal component units of the district. So that's the primary purpose of why an audit is conducted, is for us to issue this opinion. Starting on page 5 is the management discussion and analysis, or MD&A. That is management's opportunity to present their perspective on the financial information of the district and present some highlights of the year. Those highlights are on page 6. So that's summarized under the bullet points under financial highlights of the past year. So this is management's way of communicating how they felt the year went, and so this section is provided for them to do that. On page 16, that is where the basic financial statements are presented. I'm just going to read some of these things there. On page 16, the statement of net position is presented, and that is essentially a combination of all the governmental funds, the activities of all the governmental funds, general fund, etc. And it is combined under one statement, the statement of net position, assets, liabilities, and the net position. And the breakdown of those amounts are also presented by fund, and what those numbers are comprised of are also detailed in the notes. So what comprises long-term debt, accounts receivable, etc., is also broken down further in the report. And also on page 17 is a statement of activities. Again, this is government-wide, which is a combination of all the governmental funds, showing by function the expenditures of the district, as well as the revenue. And that is also broken down by fund in the report. So as you can see on page 18, we have the different major funds: general fund, capital facilities fund, capital projects, and then the non-major governmental funds on page 19, which is in the combining statements at the end of the report. Okay, so on page 28 is where our notes to the financial statements begin. Here we are going to make one correction. The last sentence of the first paragraph, financial reporting entity, we somehow included a high school and continuation school, but we will change that and submit to you a corrected page for that report. And also in the notes to the financials, we summarize the accounting principles that are used, descriptions of the different funds and the purpose for which the funds are established. So just to give you an example of the breakdown of the different types of accounts, starting on page 41, we have receivables. So this is the receivables as of June 30th, 2013. These are reported as revenue, but still hasn't been received by the districts as of June 30th, 2013. So this is broken down by federal aid, state government apportionment, and local resources. And also, on page 42 is the capital assets of the district. So we take the beginning balances, which is carried over from the prior audit report, and we look over to see if there are any additions and any deductions from capital assets to come up with the ending balance. Depreciation is allocated by function. At the bottom of page 42, depreciation is divided among different types of functional expenses of the district. On note 6, page 43 is the long-term obligation of the district. Again, we take the beginning balance and make any additions that we determine, and the deductions coming up to the ending balance as of June 30th. Long-term obligations are made up of compensated absences, which is basically accrued vacation, the general obligation bonds, and the net OPEB or other post-employment benefits obligation. And more detail of that, as far as the maturity schedule and payment, is also in the notes in the following pages. So, in section 2, required supplementary information, we include a budgetary comparison schedule, and then also the funding progress for the other post-employment benefits that's included in the general long-term debt section. And moving forward to supplementary information, here we go over.
Okay, John?
I'm sorry, page 57. There's a lot of pages to the report. Page 57. I'll slow down a little bit here. Here we have the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So this is the various federal awards that the district received during the year. And because it is under a certain threshold, we don't have to do a single audit. So we're disclosing the various different programs and the amount of expenditures that the district incurred during the year. The threshold for a single audit is federal expenditures of $500,000 or more. So we're just under that. And page 54. Okay, so in addition to that, there are other disclosures that we are required to do by the State Controller's Office. And that is summarized on page 72, which is our report on state compliance. And here there is a checklist of what we are required to look at if it is applicable to the district. Attendance reporting is always applicable, so we look at P2 reporting, average daily attendance reporting, kindergarten continuance, instructional time, making sure that the amount of instructional time is compliant with Ed Code, and CSR, et cetera. So it's all listed here, and the various schedules, such as ADA and so forth, are in the preceding pages. The schedule of average daily attendance is on page 59. Instructional time is on page 60. So those summarize our computation of average daily attendance and instructional time. On page 62 is another one that I'd like to highlight, another schedule that I'd like to highlight. I can find it. So that is the schedule of financial trends and analysis. And the main point of that is for us to determine whether or not the district has sufficient reserves in their fund balance. And that's calculated by dividing the available reserves at year end, which is unassigned fund balance, essentially, by the total expenditures and other outgo. And for a district of this size, available reserves, it should be at 3%. There is and what we calculated is, I can't find the page, but I recall it was in the 20% amount. So that's on page 62. And there are two other main auditors' reports that we issue on pages 70 and 72. One is the internal control over financial reporting. So we do take a look at internal controls. We don't actually issue an opinion on them, but if we do see deficiency in an area and so forth, we communicate that with management, and if it's significant enough, we disclose it in the report. And we don't have any internal control issues of that nature that is in the report. And then again, the auditor's report on state compliance, which is a requirement by the state controller. Lastly, we can go over the summary of the auditor's results. So we have on page 76 is where we would place any findings. We did not have any findings this year. And as for the prior year finding on page 79, the corrective action plan has been implemented, so that finding is basically will be removed going forward. I believe that pretty much summarizes the report. If there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions from the board?
Good. Just one thing on the clarification on page 28.
Yes.
Wanted to make sure the adult school wasn't listed.
Yes,
And then I think the same thing, I think I read a similar language on page 6,
Okay.
but page 58
I
has
will
it
look,
correct. So
yes, okay. We'll definitely look at that. We prove these over and over again. Sometimes the most
I can imagine.
obvious things, we see the numbers, but the words sometimes escape us. We'll look at that correctly for sure.
And thank you for, can only think about the amount of effort. Thank you too for going through this.
Thank you.
I have a question. I forget what page it was, but the enrollment information.
Yes, 88, the schedule of
Schedule.
page 59.
59, that's it.
Yes.
I was just wondering what type of time of year, or is that seabeds, or what?
Oh, that is, no, I have my pages mixed up here, but maybe Lorraine can, 59, let me see. Just around some, okay, I think I see it here. Okay. The second period report is the P2.
P2.
That is prepared after the P2 period, which it changes every year. It's pretty close. We're on March 15th, is that right? Or?
Our cutoff date was in March this year,
Yes.
but it's the last school month ending R before April 15th. And a school month is a 4-week period that starts when the school year starts. So it moves annually around, but our cutoff date was, I think, late March.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I did notice one other really minor thing.
Sure.
Page 28.
Okay.
Where you pointed out we don't have high school, but
Yes.
also in the first sentence it says OUSD was unified. Are we unified?
Union.
Oh.
Does it say?
It says unified, so I
okay.
assume that's just a typo.
Yeah, it could be a typo.
So anyway, if you're going to change the other thing, you might as
Yes.
well change that too.
Thank you for.
But
I would like to know all this.
it's very
So
minor.
then
Very
next year
minor,
it'll all be
as I said.
changed.
Yeah. No, and thank you for all the work.
Oh. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for not, for the lack of findings.
Well, we really go into this, it's really a matter of auditor judgment, whether something is significant enough to put in the findings and things. I mean, every auditor has a different approach, but if it's an anomaly, if it's something that is, if we expand our testing and see that, well, you know what, in this group, it really is such a small percentage that it's just something that can be communicated to management. So it doesn't have to be in the report.
On the on the qualified
Mm-hmm.
opinion, would it require your group personally to go and audit all those component parts in order to get an unqualified opinion? And
Well-
what's the downside of that qualified opinion?
Well, the qualified opinion is essentially like an except for this particular issue, the financial statements are materially free of any misstatement. With the community support organizations, which comprise the legal component units, the district isn't responsible for their books, basically, or their financials. So it would be difficult for the district to absorb, and take a responsibility for the financial statements, the accounting of these component units. They probably have their own, audits if they are being done. I don't think that they issue audited financial statements. But what we're representing in the audit report are the accounting and the financials that the district is responsible for. So it's one of those things. I think historically it's always been a qualified opinion because the community support organizations play such a big part in the financial support of the district, and that is the reason why they qualify as a legal component unit of the district.
Joe, I thought that EFO did have audited financial statements.
Okay, do they? Okay.
Yeah, the largest contributor,
Yeah. Okay.
single contributor does have audited.
Yeah, and if they do, and they're a separate entity still, so. Welcome. Any other questions? Even from,
I had a question.
sure,
On page 44,
okay.
At the paragraph towards the bottom, the district's annual required contribution for the year ended June 30th, 2013 was $1.5 million, and the district made contributions of $462,000 a year, and the interest and amortization adjustment of negative $57,000, which resulted in OPEM obligation of $4.2 million. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So every 2 or 3 years, depending on the number of participants and the other post-employment benefits and the retiree benefits, an actuarial is prepared. So there's a firm, an outside firm, that essentially calculates that $1.499 million, which is the annual required contribution. So there's a complex calculation on how they come up with that number based on a number of factors. So they have a parameter in which they have to work within. And one of those is the number of participants in the OPEB. So that is the annual required contribution based on the actuarial. The district is on a pay-as-you-go financing arrangement. So the contribution, the $463,000, is the actual expenditure that the district had for 12-13. So that offsets the ARC. So the difference is what we have to accrue as general long-term debt. So, and that results in that sentence where you say, which resulted in an OPEB obligation of $4.178 million. So we have the beginning net OPEB obligation from the prior year report. We add the annual required contribution, which is calculated by your actuarial, less the pay-as-you-go payments for the year, and that is the ending balance for the net OPEB obligation. Now,
For that individual year?
for that individual year, yes. So when you look at these numbers, you see the trend that OPEB continues to go up because the pay-as-you-go is essentially what just needs to be paid for the year. It doesn't take into consideration the difference or the accrual to get to the annual required contribution. One of the things that that districts do is they set up an irrevocable trust where the monies that go into that trust is used solely to pay off or pay down the net OPEB obligation. So that's how you can start to chip away at that long-term debt. But with a pay-as-you-go, really what you're just paying is what's required for the year. Yeah. And if you need, I think there's an actuarial report okay, great, in the packet. So there's a lot of explanation on what they use to calculate those numbers.
Any questions, comments from the public? Seeing none, further discussion from the board? Motion then?
I move that we approve action item A, 2012-2013 annual financial audit report.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Vote is unanimous. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will now move to a discussion item. So discussion item A, interdistrict transfer policies.
So this item is being brought tonight to the board for further discussion. It was on the agenda last night.
Were you going to explain anything about these or not? You're waiting, you're there for us to ask questions. Okay. Well, I have a question as a follow-up to last time's discussion regarding the interdistrict transfer process that we currently have. Which was, I remember Julie had asked you, Lorene, about the numbers numbers of interdistrict transfers that we've gotten, and I'm not sure if it was about employees or all interdistrict transfers. But I'm curious, I don't know if you have the numbers there. I forgot to ask Joe that earlier, or if that information would be available. But I'd be curious if you do have the numbers, how many altogether interdistrict transfers did we accept, this year or last year? And then also regarding the current process, once, I remember you explained how we have to wait until a certain period to know our enrollment, but then once that happens, what is the process for how we choose our interdistrict transfers? If there's too many, and how do we determine which interdistrict transfer application is accepted?
I have the numbers for the employee requests in previous years, how many were approved and how many were denied. I have just the employee piece, that's what was asked at last meeting.
Okay.
So in 2010, there were 23 requests, both new requests and renewals. Of the 23, 21 were approved, 2 were denied. In 2010, 11, 17 were submitted, all were approved. 2011, 12, 17 again were submitted, all were approved. 2012, 13, 15 were submitted, all were approved. And 13, 14, 15 were submitted, all were approved.
So are those, just to back up, are those all the requests or the employee requests?
Just employee.
Employee requests, okay. And the other question I had was, like this year, I remember there was we were like almost full and whatever, that you had to wait until a certain period in the school year before you could allow interdistrict transfers. So once you get to that point and where you determine that you can allow some interdistrict transfers, if there's more than you can include, what is the process for determining what application you're going to accept?
The process is a lottery process. We actually literally write numbers on a piece of paper and pull numbers out of the hat. And those numbers are associated with applicants at that grade level. And whichever numbers are pulled, those parents are contacted.
Okay.
Do you
So,
pull a wait list of numbers? Do you pull,
If we have, let's say we have, at grade 2, we have 3 openings, and we have 6 applicants, we will put in a number 1 through 6 in a hat. The one is associated with a certain student, and then someone independently, not myself, pulls a number, will pull 3 numbers out of the hat.
I mean, what happens if you contact the first number and they say?
Then we
"Oh,
would
maybe-"
pull another.
Okay.
Mhm. We continue through that process, and we have been turned down.
Did you contact them right then?
Sometimes it takes a while as far as the parent might want to think about it and get back to you, so the process could take a couple days, but that's the process.
so if these are numbers of applications of employees' applications, what about the other non-employee applications? I mean, in terms of the lottery, say you have some openings in a certain grade, 3rd grade, and now you're going to accept interdistrict transfers, but there's too many. Are you throwing all of the applications in the hat at once, whether they're employees or not?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that was the whole point of my point last time about the discussion about prioritizing employee students, because if we're just going to pull numbers out of a hat and there's applications from employees and applications from just other people that live elsewhere that would like their children to go to school in our district.
But
That's where the discussion
timing
was.
wise,
Yeah.
you'd still be performing the lottery at the same time. If we did go to a priority, you'd still be pulling numbers after all the placements have been determined, you've ensured that you have room for residents in the district with whatever, safeguards to be put in place for that to make sure we have enough room. So you're still not notifying people, even if you had a priority system. Would you be then notifying people any earlier in the process, or would it still be, hey, this is, the day before school or a week after school?
We have to wait till we know our numbers are firm, because we do get last minute adds and we get last minute drops, so it would probably still wait in the process unless there was a grade level that was extremely, had a large number of vacancies in it, which we try to avoid anyway. So if we had a situation like that where we had a grade level that was extremely under the numbers, we may do it sooner than later, but as we go through the process, we're constantly looking at the actual classroom configurations and breakdowns and still trying to maneuver to maximize our class sizes within the contract limits. So it probably wouldn't be beginning of August type of thing to look at interdistrict transfers, because we have to, those parents that reside within the district do have priority of replacement.
Right, there's sort of separate issues. I think that's a second issue, which is, in terms of how we discuss this, it's actually,
Well, giving a priority gives a better assurance, but it doesn't give a guarantee. And it doesn't necessarily give you notification any earlier in the process. That's my point.
yeah, I realize that, but having a priority is better than no priority. Right now, we have no priority.
Right, except the education code says it has to be a random unbiased selection process.
I do didn't see that in the education code. I looked it up.
Education code 48.
A random, yeah, okay, random,
Unbiased selection process.
okay.
So clearly, other
Which you
districts
could-
aren't necessarily doing, but
Right, I mean, you could read that to be after your priority is random.
Yeah, I mean, many other districts give priorities, and they no doubt have read the education code as well. So I guess there's different ways to interpret that random process. Maybe the random process, I don't know. But
you know.
I hear you.
The struggle, you know, is, you know, are you creating something? I mean, I'm in favor of creating a priority, but I don't know that.
random, what about a random process after you prioritize? You know,
Well, I think
I think
creating a.
that's inherent in
Bias.
the code. Yeah. After your priority, it becomes a law.
it becomes a random process. Yeah.
Whether your priority is
I
one
think that-
or 10 things.
Yeah, I think the thing that is the most striking to me is that if we have very few spots and we have more applicants than we have spots, every interdistrict application right now is equal. So you could be admitting a teacher, or you could be admitting anyone from outside of the area over a teacher, and the teacher's child or teacher or other staff person, their child doesn't get in, but someone else from out of the area gets in. And that, it just doesn't feel like the kind of message we want to send to our employees. And if all these other districts do it, and every single district that I looked at, you know, outside of ours, had a priority system. I didn't see any other districts when I did research looking at other districts, what is their policies? And none of them had what we have, which is no preference at all for employees. So that's
Like I said,
why
I hear what you're
was
saying, I
suggesting-
mean, you can look at the numbers and see that, you know, traditionally, almost everyone has gotten it, but it hasn't been everybody. You know, and you know, I don't know how much more notice you get out of it, which I think is part of the concern. You know, because it seems like people are getting in. Would it be better to have a priority? I think, yeah, but, you know, I do worry about that language in the statute. You know, and just because another district or a bunch of other districts are doing something that hasn't been challenged doesn't mean that, you know, that it's something we should do.
So I think we're moving a little bit more towards discussions. Are there any other questions, first of all? And then we'll open up to public comment. And I will actually add that board directing staff to get legal opinion on this matter, and the board members received information from legal counsel, so we have that as well. So comments from the public, please, on this item.
Cheryl Shen, OEA president. I know at the last meeting, I recall Matt requesting that we also get to see what the policies are in other districts that may or may not have priority systems in their district. And I haven't heard that discussion yet tonight, so I'm looking forward to that aspect. I also thought it was quite ironic, at our school site, we received a multi-home, affordable home ownership opportunity in Orinda. And in bold print, it says priority is given to households with a member who is currently employed in Orinda and has worked in Orinda for 1 year or longer. So it sounds like there's other institutions that are able to possibly get around what we're talking about is the law. And I'm wondering how they were able to do that, and yet we're not able, at this point, to give priority to our teachers.
I guess my question would be if other districts, especially,
Sorry, can you
my
say?
name is Ann right now in Florida, I'm just a parent. If other districts are doing it around us and it's been described as better, why haven't we instituted it here for our teachers and prioritize their students over random districts?
Just to clarify, there's a time for public comment, and so the public gets to comment, and then we discuss this. Not answer time.
Leslie Millstone, did I say that? Millstone, OIS. Two questions. One, you said that the district sought legal counsel, and I know you can't comment back, but I'm hoping that that can be part of the conversation so we can hear back what you found out through that inquiry. And then secondly, I do see Sarah's point and Julie's point as being two different discussions. From my understanding, there is no way around that August deadline, because you do have to see, you know, what your residents, how your residents are filling out the school. So me, who has 2 children, knowing that I'm trying to do an inter-district transfer here, I know that I'm gonna have to wait till after either the day right before school starts or after school starts. I'm not asking for that to change. I am asking strongly for you to consider and create a policy that states a priority for teachers' children over other inter-district transfers. Other school districts are doing it in the area, and I feel that if you don't make a strong stand for teachers, it can really negatively affect our working morale and also our family life.
Heather Razor, I'm counselor at OIS. The other thing I'd like you to consider is what we were kind of talking about before was the date of when you notify people. I know at the Oklahoma's Union School District, several of our teachers at OIS have had kids go to school there, and many of them are notified in April and May of their pending interdistrict transfer. And I'm wondering how come they are notified so much sooner than what we're notified here. I just think that's something to look into as far as why that is. And I again encourage you to be open-minded about us as staff, and similar piggyback off what Leslie said is this is a huge issue with the staff, and it's a morale issue, and it's just so personal to, I want to be here, I want to live here, I would love to be able to live in Orinda, and I'm going to go to the meeting over at Pulte because I'm hoping I can be one of those people that might be able to look into that. I'm going to try to do everything I can to be a part of this community, and I feel like I already am, but I just need to encourage you again to look at us as individuals who want the best for our kids, and if there is a priority you can give us, I encourage you to give us that priority.
This is a question I know you can't answer.
Sorry, can you introduce yourself?
Excuse me?
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, Bill Hudson. I'm just wondering what the fiscal impact of all this is. I mean, is it something we absolutely can't afford, or benefit that might not, that would do, sounds to me like the agenda sounded good, and not the most cost.
Any other comments from the public?
I'm Brian Valentin from the school system and just graduated college a few months ago. It seems to me that as a teacher, which I'm becoming, the way your family life is and all of that reflects tremendously on how you treat kids and how much you care about their education that day, or rather like how that's manifested. So I would encourage you to like give this little gift if you can figure out a way to do that, of like showing that to the teachers so that they can come to school every day ready to give their all.
Comments from the public?
Hi, Gwen.
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, my name is Sue Bourgeois. I teach at Orinda Intermediate School. Any policy that's going to be different to neighbouring school districts gives the possibility of it being newsworthy. And I would love to see Orinda being in the news for good reasons. I'd also like to say that 5 years in, after you've been hired, is the time when headhunters come and try and recruit people away from school to private schools and to neighbouring school districts. And that's also a time when people are thinking about having children and getting involved with families if you hire fairly young teachers. So if you have a promise that your children will go to these schools, it's going to be a powerful reason to keep and retain good teachers. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the public on this item? Thank you. And I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion.
Well, I have another question for Lorraine. Since someone brought up how they do it in high school, I'm wondering, of course in the high school it's much bigger and the class size is not as challenging. Our OIS is a little bit that way. It seems that there's less challenge on fitting interdistricts in. So how does it work for requests for interdistrict transfer to OAS? Is that, do they get notified earlier? I assume it's not as big a problem as elementary schools, or what do we do now for interdistrict transfer requests for OAS?
For OIS, it is by grade level. It is calculated a little bit differently because of the class size that we have at the primary grade levels. So, but their grade level, they do also have a ratio, but it depends on the number of sections per subject area that we're providing. So there is a little more leeway as far as numbers, because it's an average across the board divided by the sections rather than actual classrooms. So it's different, but it's treated the same in that we have to wait until we know who's coming before we can respond to either in the approval or the denial process of the interdistrict transfers. So it's the calculation is different, but the process is the same.
So you're saying right now we notify them at the same timing as those applicants in the elementary school, or not? I'm not clear actually. If there's applications and there seems to be room, do you notify them at some earlier point in the summer, or do you wait till August for everybody?
We have to wait.
Okay.
We have to wait.
And so that's true for OAS applications also?
But
or?
yes, but with the board policy, it's openings per school site. So each school site gets looked at individually. And OIS, pardon me?
And each grade.
Right. And at OIS, it's by grade level. So it's not, it's a different way of looking at it, but they're treated the same.
Okay, thank you.
I should mention earlier, we actually do have, as requested, policies from other surrounding districts, if anyone would like to review those. It became, at least for me, less germane to the discussion after reading the legal opinion, which, for the benefit of the public, talked about how Orinda was challenged on its policy in the past, and how not aware of whether that practice was ever challenged in those other districts as it was Orinda. So saying there may be legitimate reasons why our policy may need to differ from surrounding districts, and that our advice to the district was that in order to avoid claims of discrimination, the district's safest avenues were either to allow eligible transfers into the district for anyone employed within the district boundaries, and not necessarily those employed by the district, or to deny all eligible transfers by not opting to include the Allen-Bill option in the board policy. If the district decides to allow traditional transfers, random process is required. There's some more in that, but that was perhaps answers some of the questions.
So I'm glad you read that, Chris. I thought it was very interesting myself. Most of the beginning of that seems to apply to the Allen bill, which is the district residency issue, which, since someone mentioned Pulte, that's related to allowing any students of anyone who is employed in Orinda as opposed to someone employed by our district. And that's a big difference. And we were challenged, is my understanding, we were challenged by someone who worked in Orinda, not for the school district, and they wanted their child to be able to go to school here. And that's what the Allen bill is about. That is a separate issue from the interdistrict transfer policy and that issue. And so that's why I was trying to separate it in the discussion last time.
I agree with you. I mean, I think that opinion really focuses on the residency issue and makes pretty clear that that's something we can't really do. So the question is, what about interdistrict transfers? Can you create a priority? The legal opinion says you need a random selection process. The ed code says you need a random unbiased selection process, and then you have all these districts around you that do a priority. You know,
Right.
so the question is,
Well, yes,
Yeah,
and
we
that
have-
sentence is one sentence in his legal opinion that says.
but it's also in your code. I mean,
Well,
it is in the code.
Yeah, it says in the code you have to have a random process, so every other district has read the code also, and they've also consulted their attorneys, and they, for whatever reason, have been able to put in the priority. So I don't think, I mean, I'm not comfortable just deciding not to do it based on that one sentence. I think, you know, we need to have the attorney here or decide, you know, let's try to pursue it. A lot of times, in order to do something like this, a policy like this, you know, you set up a subcommittee or a policy committee. I know that's what they did in Lafayette. They had a policy committee, subcommittee of the board to get into all the nitty-gritty details. But we're doing it here in this meeting. I don't know, it makes it harder, but
Well, to throw in an idea here. I guess what I'd like to hear as a board member from the board would be, if we don't have a roadblock, whether you throw the discrimination blanket on it or you come up with ed code or whatever you want to say, if we don't have a roadblock, what is the priority of, or is there one that we would want to see? Because my take is that if this gets challenged, then we can talk about it again and figure out an avenue, but it hasn't been challenged yet, so I'm not too concerned personally about this issue getting challenged. I think it's actually one thing that would retain and also get folks to want to come work here. So I've seen priorities that actually address the portion of the Allen bill constraint where one of the priority in the list is folks that work, right? Children of folks that work here. So I'm more curious, since we're talking about interdistrict transfers, if we wanted to prioritize, do people have opinions on that, regardless of what the backstop is or the why you don't want to talk about it rationale is?
If I were to do it, I would probably follow pretty closely what the lines does for their priority, which I guess is in that packet somewhere. But, you know, I think they just put a priority in for employees, kids in their interdistrict policy, interdistrict transfer policy. It's nothing about the Allen bill. It's nothing about residency. It would be 5117 and AR 5117.
yeah, I think it just says employees of the district, right? Is that what you're referring to? Do you have it right there, Chris? The Akalani's policy?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Aquilani's not here.
Ah. Well, I think it says employees of the district have a priority.
Their administrative regulation says when a student is the child of an employee of the school district of the superintendent or designee may approve, I'm mixing ours with theirs, but the superintendent or designee may approve interdistrict attendance requests for the following reasons, lay out some reasons, and then you add in, when the student is the child of an employee of the school district, the district will give priority to this consideration. Do something like what they do.
Yeah, so that's not even really a list, it's more about just noting the priority.
And then I think there's something in the board policy that coordinates with that. I don't know, actually, I don't know if the board policy even specifically addresses that, it might just be in the reg.
And given that it's an inter-district transfer policy, it doesn't force you to accept that student, because if the class is full and you don't have room at all, you're not, you know, it's not gonna cost you any more money, in other words, because you're not forced to. It's just that if you are accepting any inter-district transfers, the priority is given to employee students.
Well, and to be clear too, I mean, you know, there's gotta be space available. You know, the student has to maintain certain standards in terms of academics. I mean, it isn't carte blanche in terms of that. There's still a lot in the AR that really lines out what the student that the district would welcome, right?
The little concern for me is that ed code, that says we need to have a random unbiased selection process. And does that mean that we should be creating a priority for certain groups?
Does legal opinion address the ed code?
The only thing he says is that online,
It's required.
other transfers require a random selection process.
Well, I still think we would have a random process. It's just that the employee students get prioritized first, and then the others, and then within that, you have a random process. So it's still a
But
random process.
that's taking out the selected group,
Mhm.
so that does take away from the random unbiased process. If you're saying everyone needs to be considered equally, and then you're selecting out a specific group not to be treated equally, that is inherently not necessarily a random unbiased process.
Right, but I guess there are very few things in the public domain that are true benefits, and I'd say you do it until you're challenged and then figure it out, because what's the challenge gonna be?
Discrimination lawsuit.
What'd you say?
For what?
Discrimination lawsuit.
How do they know what they get rejected for when they get rejected?
Have
You know,
a policy
the district
that
doesn't have to tell them. You have to tell them the reason in this specifically. So you would tell them with the numbers.
So if it was
And
that,
they also, I mean, as I understand it, there's a process that happens at the county level that people challenge. They go before the county board and look at the policy and decide if you upheld the policy.
So if
Be something
the-
good for our teachers.
if the possibility of a discrimination lawsuit was that serious, and other districts have had their policies for several years, why wouldn't have someone sue them if that was really I doubt that it's that easy a thing to do, because otherwise someone would have already sued the other districts that have this policy in place. But I'm only speculating, and, but to me, that's a huge part of this, the fact that it's in place in so many districts and they haven't had legal problems. And we don't have our attorney here, so we only had one sentence there in that written statement. We can't ask him those detailed questions.
But I think they also said it was, that we were perhaps in a different situation because we've been challenged before.
But that was on a different issue. It's on a district residency policy, not the insured district
So
policy.
it was on a prioritization
Well,
policy.
I don't see it as the same.
yeah,
I mean,
to me, it's completely
I'd like to
different.
understand it, because I'm trying to understand what is the risk. Okay, so someone sues you. I mean, you can sue people for just about anything in this country, and there's exposure in terms of lawyers having to spend energy on it, but at the same time, the benefit of having teachers come in here and have a better work environment, you know, against the lawsuit. I don't know, I see the benefit outweigh the risk. And then the risk can always be dealt with and things can change.
Yeah, worst case scenario, if someone really makes a big stink, then you consider changing at that point. I'm not concerned about that part of it. I don't know, I don't have a clear read on the other three of you. And then into the table, but if you have that much concern about that statement in the attorney's statement, maybe we should, you know, talk to him directly so that we can ask him the questions that we have, as opposed to just reading that one sentence. Because I think this is a big important thing for the staff. And I wouldn't want us to make a decision based on such limited information from our attorney based on the legal issues.
So is there consensus of the board moving forward?
Well, I mean, personally, I'm in favor of granting a priority, and I think there's a consensus that we would like to, but I would like to get the answer to the question of specifically on the interdistrict transfer policy, can we legally give a priority? And I understand that we have an opinion, but, you know, my reading of it is that it really focused on the residency issue and not on the interdistrict attendance issue. And it would be nice to get clarification on that specific piece.
So, Chris, we did have that clarified. That does prevent us from adopting a policy. It doesn't have a random process. That's why that was wrong.
Well, he's not here for us to ask questions. I'm wondering if there's another time when we're planning to have our attorney here anyway, like in the past when we had the Pulte, there are various times he's already been here. If there's a time when he can be here anyway, can we put this on the agenda at that time and ask him in person? Because that is so much more valuable than just having this one-line statement, and this is a pretty complex issue and so important to us.
Okay, so I'm hearing consensus that we want to consider a prioritization, but we want additional, more specific to us clarification. So we'll move
Well,
forward.
also, I mean, outside of the legal counsel, the superintendent, you have a rapport with all the neighboring superintendents and beyond. I mean, it seems to me that there are districts that have already crossed this bridge. It'd be interesting to understand how those superintendents are dealing with it and how they got there.
I did that last week.
So do you have any specifics to share? I mean,
The specifics are that they have not been challenged like we were, and they're hoping that they're not, so they can continue doing what they're doing, but we were challenged, and that's why our policies were changed. They were never challenged.
And they haven't been
They
challenged
recognize
since
the hole in their policies, and they recognize their vulnerability before the county board, which ours is too, because if the county board overturns one of the, say, a parent who comes forward and says, why can't I have my child in the district, and that opens the door to all parents who work in Orinda to come into the district. So those other districts are hoping that they'll be able to continue without being challenged, but we were. That's why the policy was written the way it was.
right on the residency piece.
So I have a question. So you're saying the other districts haven't been challenged so far on their interdistrict policy?
Or the residency.
Priorities?
Yeah.
Or any of it? Okay.
No, I didn't say that. I'd say all districts pretty much have had their interdistrict policies at one time or other before the county board. We all are vulnerable to to another entity making a decision for us, and you tend to base it on what you have in your policies and then what what you've said and what you've done. So the other districts haven't had the issue that we have where someone has challenged us on our potential discrimination as stated in legal opinion. So that's why the policies were structured by legal counsel to protect the district before the county board and in a potential claim for discrimination. Because the alternatives are you either let everybody meaning anyone who works within the territory of the school district, so you either let them all in, or you don't automatically let anyone in and you go to a random process as in the district transfer policy. Those are really our options. So the board could choose to just go ahead and let everybody in to the district who works in random. And that would also solve the problem.
So you're saying basically the current policy that we have works well enough because in almost every year, teachers' children do get into our district and it doesn't create a process that would be against what our attorney recommends.
I want to ask you another question, Joe, about what you just said. If we put something in the prioritize the interdistrict transfer for our district, and they went to the county board, and the county board said, yes, you're right, they're prioritizing, and that's not okay. Wouldn't we just have to change our interdistrict policy back to not prioritizing? That wouldn't affect the residency policy. We wouldn't have to let everybody in, or not at all. We would still have an interdistrict policy the way it is now. Right?
Yeah, I don't know, because I can't speak for the county board. They
Yeah.
more than likely what they've done in the past is they've allowed that student then to enter the district.
Mm.
And there have been cases where they've done that to districts on interdistrict transfer denials. So that then opens the door for other parents to come forward and do the same thing, since they approve one, they have to approve others if the circumstances are so.
But again, the argument back is we already have something in there basically stating that overcrowding and different ratios are employed and capacities. So we've limited ourselves on what we can accept, and that's a viable rationale for denial. So, I mean, if it seems to me that if somebody wants to challenge it, they could challenge that too and say, hey, your ratio is too low. I'm going to sue you because you're discriminating and not letting me in just because you want to have 24 kids versus 25.
And that has happened to other districts. They have that situation.
Okay, so we're not worried about that right now. So, I mean, I guess I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but it seems there's a lot of room for debate and for different folks to come in and throw a card down and sue trying to get their way, regardless if we look at this policy that we have, or we change it. That's at least that's my opinion.
I just want to say again, it seems if we did prioritize the interdistrict policy and then someone went to the county board, if they were to determine that we shouldn't have prioritized, then that just means we can't prioritize interdistrict transfer policy. We're back to where we are now. It doesn't seem like that's so bad, because I think we have so much to gain. I mean, I'm not sure that they would do that because every other district out there has priorities in their interdistrict transfer, and they're not making that determination. Other people aren't going to the county board, as far as I know. So if they did that to us, it doesn't seem like we have that much to lose. We're just back to where we are now, and it would be such a huge gain for us to be able to give our teachers a priority.
We circle back to the consensus.
Remedy available to just challenging that, and it would be some other more substantial penalty.
The county board?
No, if there was a discrimination lawsuit or something like that. just saying, your penalty might not be just,
Well, now we're speculating about a discrimination lawsuit. We
well,
don't
you're
have our
speculating
attorney.
about what the remedy would be.
Mhm,
You know, I'm just saying, it could be more than just that.
mhm. Well, it seems like,
I think we've had a good discussion. I think it's time to move forward.
so where are we gonna go with this?
We had consensus that we wanted to consider prioritization, and we wanted more specific legal.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda is action item B, Common Core State Standards Implementation Funds Expenditure Plan.
Just a few minutes, I will be presenting the Common Core Implementation Funds. That will include a review of what we discussed at the December 9th board meeting and with revisions from the December 9th board meeting. As you recall, I presented,
It's kind of hard to see. Can we turn off that light or? Thank you, that's much better.
so I also want to share that it is it's embedded in our first board goal to develop an expenditure plan for the implementation funds. The state requires it be in 3 areas: instructional materials, professional development, and technology, which is also in our district goal, and all related to supporting the implementation of Common Core standards and online assessments. So just to recap, this is one-time funds to support, as I mentioned, the Common Core standards and online assessments. I shared this same slide at our last meeting, that the allocation is based on enrollment taken on the census day in October of 2,488 students at $296 per student. And the apportionment is for 2 years at a total of $499,995. We need to spend it by July 1st, 2015. And this also is a review from our last meeting describing the condition for receiving these funds. Even though we have the funds, we have to develop an expenditure plan to use them. They need to be explained in a public meeting, which is what took place in December, and then it's adopted at a subsequent meeting. And then by July 1st, 2015, we provide a detailed report of those expenditures to the California Department of Education. So if I were to just share with you the process that we have gone through to get to tonight, we developed the 3-year curriculum plan last year, and that has really served as a foundation for identifying the priorities for these expenditures in this one-time funding source. We also reviewed the current tech plan and the teacher surveys from 2012-2013. This helped to provide our current needs for setting priorities in the area of technology. Since our last meeting, we have also been able to review the results from what is referred to as the State Technology Readiness Tool to assess how prepared we are to implement online assessments. This has helped us to determine gaps. We have discussed this with various groups and committees within the district, and you have a timeline that was included in your board packet that has been revised. This has included leadership team, curriculum committee, coordinating council, OTAC committee, Marin IT, and directors. The draft plan presented to the board on December 9th was presented, and staff was requested to take the plan back and relook at how we can
possibly look at some of the expenditures for technology and move them into the facilities fund and to increase staff professional development. So those revisions are in the plan to share with you this evening. So when I share with you the revisions will show that tonight we're presenting a plan that includes an increase in using the one-time Common Core Standards funds with an additional amount added to instructional materials. Professional development is increased and technology is decreased. And actually what I want to share with you is that these are shifts in the one-time resource. They're shifts because when we developed the 3-year curriculum plan and we set actions and goals for the 3 years, we also set aside funds to implement those goals. And those funds came from the instructional materials funds, which was in the Tier 3 flexibility and was a carryover. And we had funds in the professional development block grant fund. So we already had funds set aside for textbook adoptions and for professional development. And so with that, in re-looking at the Common Core Expenditure Fund, we are shifting funds because this is a more restricted funding source that needs to be spent within a certain period of time. For technology, there are some funds in the infrastructure that qualify to come out of POLTE. And so that is why technology has been reduced. So with the revisions, the pie chart on the bottom right side was what we reviewed in December. The pie chart now that shows the percentages shows that for instructional materials there's an increase of 10% from 9% to 19% from the Common Core Standards Expenditure Implementation Funds. Professional development has been increased by 10% as well. It was 39%. And the technology is down 20%. We're allocating 32% for technology. And as we're able to do this, it's because we are shifting those funds. So I wanted to share with you what we have as of today in those other one-time funds. So the balance as of today in the instructional materials fund that was set aside for textbook adoptions over the course of the next 3 years, knowing that we're going to have to adopt all those funds. This is what remains today. And then the professional development block grant, we have been slowly whittling away at it. And this is what we have remaining now. And so you'll see that for us to add more into the professional development, it will really truly support the professional development needed over the course of the next few years, because that is a dwindling account. It is also good practice to use up your restricted funds over your carryover. The IMF and the professional development do not have a required date of when they need to be expended, as do the Common Core Standard funds. So when we look at how we are increasing that, I want to share with you where those increases were. So let's see, I don't have a little pointer here, do I? But the $94,345 is the new amount. And I wanted to share with you where we were looking at those increases for instructional materials. So what we have shifted from the instructional materials one-time funding that we had is really looking at the reading level libraries in the classroom and allocating dollars to school sites based on the inventory and the need. In the curriculum plan, it talks about this is one of our goals. And it's very appropriate to use this fund to improve those libraries. And so that has been added here with an allocation out to each school site. For mathematics, it has come up as a need that math manipulatives and teacher resources are a necessity in order to implement the math required for the conceptual understanding. And so again, taking inventory of what schools have and what is needed, this is an allocation out to the sites to build those resources at this time. Textbooks would still come out of the instructional materials fund. We didn't change any of the allocations in the report card development. That's absolutely fine as it is based on what I reported in December until now. In the software programs, we've made a minor adjustment based on enrollment. Typically, when we're looking at online assessment programs and this special ed IEP Goalbook that I know we'll be talking about, it really is based on enrollment numbers. So we wanted to make sure that we put a cushion in there. And I do want to say, even though I have calculated out and shared how we have put the increase in instructional materials, the adjustments may be necessary within this category. And so if we can maintain some flexibility within this category, still keeping with the 94,345 at the top, it will allow us to make decisions based on what the need is at the school sites. The same for professional development. The increase in the professional development really falls into the realm of what is the big goal in our curriculum plan, which is the collaboration and the articulation, which is throughout the plan. So this also includes specific committee work that we are doing in order to transfer and build our units in this transition. Some work that's going on now, as an example, is our teachers are facilitating the transition to our new on-demand assessments. So other active groups that are outlined in the plan would be covered by this fund. The math training allows us to build in some additional opportunities in the summertime and or beyond next year. So we've elevated that up so that we could have not only June training this year and a June training next year, but potentially an August training, so that we can reach as many teachers who choose to train during the summer with choices. The science, we were covering middle school. The curriculum plan talks about KE articulation. This builds in more opportunities to build that over the next couple of years. And then with the technology training, this is an additional opportunities for concentrated practice lesson study in the digital skills in the summer and throughout next year. All of these figures include stipends for teachers and or substitutes for them to be able to have the time to accomplish the task at hand. Under technology, we have removed the items that meet the criteria to be pulled from the PULTE funds, and that primarily is the gig switches, any upgrades that are needed, wireless that needs to take place to be built in and improved upon. What we have learned through that state technology survey is that over the next couple years, they're going to be phasing out how you can, certain support for programs on devices. And so we actually have done some shifts here right now, recognizing that next year and the year after, our devices will not be able to read the tests, some of our devices. So we have to build in some level of accommodation for that. The bandwidth is an annual upgrade. And with it being an annual upgrade, it really shouldn't come out of and can't come out of one-time funds. So that will most likely be a general fund expense. We anticipate that's about $34,000 a year. So the operational and system support is each year we need to upgrade every single computer, teachers and students. And so that is looking at building in the additional support in the summertime of tech support touching each computer to increase it. So you'll see that by moving the infrastructure out, it has reduced the technology to 159, again, floating and allowing room for adjustments within this category. So with that, I'm presenting to you tonight a plan that has the adjustments that still meets the total allocation with these dollars in these categories. The curriculum committee did meet last week to review the changes and provide further input to the plan. If in the future there was ever a need for a major change to any of the categories, it would be brought back to the board for revisions. So the next steps would be to adopt the expenditure plan. Once it's adopted, we can begin allocation of funds, setting up budgets for that. And then also we need to begin monitoring the budgets in preparation for the detailed reporting to the Department of Education.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Any questions?
I just want to thank the district for Kathy and Ed was involved as well, and maybe almost all of you probably were involved. To find nearly 6 figures, or 20%, is, and defer it to a more restricted area. And then obviously pull those restricted dollars and shuffle things around. I mean, it's great to see that there was that much room given the time and space this district's at.
Yes, I also want to thank you for making that change. I think it's good that we can use the Pulte funds for that technology, so I really appreciate you doing that. I do have one minor question regarding science. I know you had science identified as one of the areas for, I guess it was professional development, but that seemed like it was the recent change. Had we already allocated money for science in the previous one? I just can't remember.
Yes, we had. We had allocated science for middle school support. Right now our elementary support is coming through the Bayside Partnership and is covered. What we hadn't allocated for extensively was the K-8 articulation and planning and building that science network. We had set aside some dollars, but as we have met with our Bayside partners, and as we see what's coming over the next few years, having a little bit more funds there for more teachers to collaborate together will benefit the district.
Great, great. Okay, I'm glad to see that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Any comments from the public?
Charles Shannon, President. I just want to say that having additional funds for staff development and materials and resources is going to really support teachers, and I appreciate all the work that Kathy Marshall has done to ensure that that money helps us transition to the Common Core. So thank you, Kathy.
Colleen Sullivan, teacher and OEA vice president. I want to express my appreciation for revisiting the percentages and readjusting them. Teachers are really putting a lot of personal time on the transition to Common Core and developing materials to use in the classroom. And I think that the money set aside now for instructional materials and staff development will be very helpful to them. So thank you very much. And thank you, Kathy.
Other comments from the public? Any other discussion from the board?
I would like to say that I would like to get a copy of the PowerPoint, just because those breakouts aren't in our board packet. And I also am wondering, since I think it's important for us to be as transparent as we can as a board, if if we might, I don't know, put some of this information somehow on the website or have it available somewhere for other people who aren't at this meeting to be able to access what we're doing in terms of this expenditure plan. I'll preface, or I'll add, I was kind of thinking we were going to see some of this breakdown in the board packet, and since it isn't there, that's why I'm saying I'd like to get a copy and see what way we can make this available to others who aren't at the meeting. Thank you.
Do you have a motion? It's not items on action.
I move that we approve the Common Core State Standards Implementation Funds Expenditure Plan.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This motion passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, thank you, Kathy. Action item C, contract with Comcast installation in the new district office and increasing demand for bandwidth.
So when we move back to the new district office, we have to reconnect Comcast there from here, and we'll be on fiber there at the new district office. And also, at the same time, we're going to go from the 100 megabytes bandwidth to the 200 megabytes bandwidth, which you heard Kathy say is going to be needed annually. Brain IT also suggested heavily that we do that now while we're going to disrupt everything moving into the district office. It would be a good time to do it. The cost for doing this is $1852.38 per month, which would be $22,250.56 annual. And they were going to charge us for the reconnection to the new district office, and after talking with them a little bit about the bandwidth, they decided to waive that fee. So that's the fee, and the recommendation is the Board of Education approves the amount for $22,228.56.
And any idea what we were paying in the district office before it was demolished for internet service?
For just the T1 lines? Wasn't very much.
$500?
I don't remember.
Okay. Just, I was curious.
Probably less than like $300, so.
Yeah, it was
The
nothing.
What are the T1?
Yeah, it's just,
What is T1?
it's just like the old DSL lines.
Oh, yeah.
I think we had 6 megabytes for the whole district. 8 megabytes.
So I have a question. So if we do this, and I mean, it seems like we totally need to do this to me, because our bandwidth, I know, is a problem. But how does it work for the different school sites? Is it equally available to every other school site?
Yeah, so it'll be 200 megabytes going from Comcast to the county office of ed, and then 200 megabytes coming from the county office of ed to the district, and then it'll be 100 megabytes going to each school site.
What does the county office of ed have to do?
That's our internet provider.
Oh, okay.
So that's where we want our big pipe.
Okay. But, you know, for example, if OAS has more computers than one of the elementary schools, how does that work? Do they get, is that an issue or not an issue?
It's not an issue.
Not an issue.
And if it is, we can always change it to give someone a different bandwidth than the others.
Okay. And then I have one other question that's sort of related to this. In terms of the district office itself, maybe we don't need bandwidth for that, but in our new conference room, I assume we're going to have a better speaker system and all that.
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess one question, they don't supply any equipment at all with this, it's just a fiber connection? There's no UPS,
There's a router in
okay. And Was it looked at to go to even larger service at all at this time? Do you know what the next
Not
step
this
is?
time, no.
Do we know, do they go up to what the next jump is?
I think it's 300 megabytes.
So they just go by 100?
I know the St. Mary's is at 700 right now, so I think they just jump up and give us fun.
And with, I guess with the fiber that we're gonna have drawn in, are they gonna, if we, say, 5 years looking down the road, are they gonna have to bring in additional?
No, they don't change the cable, they just turn on the.
Right, the bandwidth.
Yeah. Unless they come up with some new technology, which you never know.
So you're saying that it's easy to increase the bandwidth above this, or would just be adding additional
It's very
fees
easy.
in?
It's
Fiber
very
has
easy
to-
to increase it.
So if we wanted to go to 300 or something? Okay, because I was reading one place that said they recommended it was, some tech organization was recommending a minimum of 100 megabytes per 1,000 students. So I'm wondering, sort of going with what Sarah was saying also, you might be wanting to ship more location. And they were looking at like, well, by 2017, 2018, you really want to be like 1,000
Yeah, the sharing of documents and
Right.
that.
So you're saying we can pretty easily expand on that, it would just be an additional cost?
The big cost when you go up higher is if you want to keep everything really flying from the classroom, you have to make your switches faster too.
Mhm.
So that's why now they're going to 100 megabyte switches. They should notice a huge improvement with that.
What are those new switches? They're being installed now at OAS?
The wireless and a few of the switches are being installed now, in the summertime we'll finish up.
So you just said 100 megabyte switches, but it says we're going to 200 megabyte.
The main pipe of the district is 200 megabytes.
Was that Marin IT's recommendation on the?
Okay, is there any comments from the public on this item?
May I ask Mr. Solis a clarification question? No, okay.
You can ask us, though.
I'll just in the dark. No.
I'm saying you can ask.
Put in
Okay,
that comment
so I didn't
form.
quite understand 100 to 200, but the school sites would still be 100.
Further discussion on this item or clarification?
So clarification, Ed, the 200 comes into the district office, and then it goes out to each school site. And when it gets to the school site, it's 100 at each school site?
That's what it will be.
That's what it will be.
Right now, it's 100 and it goes to 50 to each site.
I see. And if you wanted to change the proportion, like send 150 to OIS or something like that, some bigger amount, if you needed to do that, that would be possible.
Yes, you have to change some of the equipment, but yes, you can do that.
So is that changing the switches, or is that nothing to do with that?
Routers and switches.
So I guess my question, Ed, is if we know that demands are going to be increasing ad infinitum as far as on the pipeline, why not oversize the switches now rather than potentially, I don't know how much a switch costs, and I don't know how much a 100 megabyte switch costs versus a 200 megabyte switch, but why not over switch now in anticipation of what we're going to sit down and be talking about in 2 or 3 years?
I think it's a crapshoot, because if you spend, let's say we go to 700 megabyte switches, and then a year from now, they say, yeah, you don't use that anymore.
Old technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's folks using microwave dishes right now that try and put gigabits in different places through the air, so at some point fiber is going to be moved too.
So just to wrap this up, so at each individual school, they currently have 50 megabytes? So this will be doubling it at each school site?
Correct.
From 50 to 100. Okay. That's great.
Okay, this item is on for action.
I move that we approve Action item C, contract with Comcast for installation of new district office and increase in bandwidth.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item was unanimously passed. Okay, thank you, Ed. And next item is action item D, contract with Newton Anderson and McCormick to conduct study on energy efficiencies, climate control, and solar energy initiatives.
So the board requested to get costs for doing energy planning for the district. And the planning will include getting funds from Prop 39, solar, and energy efficiency. And we used Newcomb Anderson McCormick for our audit, our recent audit. So it made sense to use them for the planning part of it too, since they already have all the information from the audit. The Prop 39 funds make sure everything is done correctly and to receive any funding. That's what NAM will do. Their plan will include energy efficiencies for conservation, solar photovoltaic systems, and applying for Prop 39 funding. And the cost to do this complete project is $69,970. And if we decide to do the solar portion of the project only, the cost would be $41,775. These costs for the planning of this comes out of the Prop 39 fund. And the recommendation is that we approve the amount of $69,970 for Newcomb Anderson and McCormick. I also have Russell Driver here from Newport, and he's here to answer any questions you might have.
So I have a question. When you said on the cost, if the district chooses to only do the solar portion, that would be $41,000. I'm assuming you mean not do the energy efficiencies? I mean, that you would have to do the Prop 39 funding part regardless, right? Yeah, so that means not do the energy efficiency. Okay. But doesn't, yeah, okay. Just wanted to understand that.
So on that note, when does that choice get made? Is that into step 5 or 4 or something in terms of the flow of this? I mean, it seems like you don't make that decision right now.
It's pretty close to upon you. The CEC is taking expenditure plan submittals starting this month over the next couple of months to secure the project funding for doing implementation work. You've already...
So it's at the planning stage when you make that? Okay.
Yeah, you can submit the expenditure plan at any point now. So
Wasn't part of the requirement for Prop 39 doing the energy efficiency? Weren't you supposed to be doing your energy efficiency projects as a, sort of an avenue for getting Prop 39 funds, or before you do solar, or?
No, so what the regulations or guidelines allow you to do is apply for some planning funding, which I believe the district has done, to use for audit work and benchmarking and all these other requirements that lead up to submitting an expenditure plan. Most of those are taken care of from our earlier work. We need to use some of their calculators and forms and tools to put together the expenditure plan. So the expenditure plan triggers the release of the project funds, then you can do implementation work.
And does the 69,000, does that also include, is part of that you guys making recommendations about how to fund a solar project, or is that outside the scope?
Yes, it will. As we start to put together the procurement documents, we will assemble a set of financing options, I should say, for you as part of that, yes.
I also have a question on the timeline of this. I kind of felt like the energy efficiencies made a lot of sense, and I was hoping we would move forward with that before I'm just speaking from my opinion as an individual here, but if we wanted to move ahead, say, on that portion before we got all the bids and all the details on solar, is that possible, and how does this timeline work? And what would be, I don't remember seeing the timeline in here, because I'm wondering how much can we get done in the summer, and what's realistic here, and how would this work out?
Yeah, good question. For starters, the implementation of the energy efficiency measures and the solar does not have to be coordinated or going at the same time. They're in all likelihood going to be different contractors anyway. The efficiency work can happen much faster than the solar work, given the involvement of the Division of State Architect and some other things going on with the big solar projects. We didn't have time to really put together a detailed schedule, so we can work with staff to do that. I think it's reasonable to expect the energy efficiency work to be done this summer. The solar work would be pushing it pretty hard to get that installation done this summer, given how long these things tend to take. We could sequence the work in that way if that's your preference. And the way we try to set this up is so that you sort of have a series of go, no-go decision points anyway, particularly with something like the solar, which is a large investment. So we would put together the procurement documents in an RFP, solicit those proposals, and then with staff come back to you and say, here's how things are looking. We'll update all the financial models we did to make sure that your savings still look like what they looked like when we did that feasibility work and audit last time I was here, so that you have a better sense of what those benefits would look like moving forward. So there's always an opportunity to either not move forward or change your approach at that point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when you just said the solar would be pushing it to do this summer, is that assuming you're talking about all sites? What if you just did one site, or is that pushing it even just to do one site?
It's still pushing it. I wouldn't say impossible. If that's the goal, like to get OIS in, we would have to huddle up real quick and figure out what a schedule would look like to do that. One of my primary concerns there is almost more a procurement and contract negotiation concern rather than an installation concern. If the timeline is so short, you give up a lot of negotiating leverage, frankly, with the vendors who are coming in, because you just don't have time to work the issues as you're trying to get a contract put together. It can be done, but there are just some trade-offs, I think, for the district as our client, and how quickly you go through that process.
And then following up on that, what is your experience with school districts? Is it better to only install solar in the summer, or could it be done during the year, or what?
I've seen it done both ways, and it really has to do with your operations, and a lot of this goes into parking areas, and so that dictates a lot of it, the utilization of your parking lots. I know we had identified several sites that were on the edges of play fields and in some of the play areas, and frankly that becomes tougher, right, during school. So my sense of it is for this district is that summer is probably really where you want to be with construction.
Oh, one more question. On the energy efficiencies, there was pretty detailed description in the previous report about, the heaters and all multiple topics there. Is that, in terms of moving forward on that, would be the next, are you going to take another level of detail looking at exactly what gets done before, and how does, I guess I kind of want to know, how does that work? Do you scope it out first and then get bids on it, or do you have the different contractors who potentially might do it, walk through and discuss with you, or with Ed, or exactly what are you going to do there? Because it seems
We're
like
strong
there's a lot
proponents
of
of bidding out. So we've done a good chunk of the legwork already as part of the audit program. We will have to collect a little more data and package things a little bit differently in order to get a bid on the street, bid packet that folks can respond to in a clean way. So this task 6 on the bid process does that for both the solar project and the energy efficiency projects, and that's why I broke out the solar separately depending on what you all wanted to do. So that carries you through production, development of that RFP, receiving the bids, working with your staff to pick the right one, and bringing it back here for approval for moving forward with those energy efficiency projects.
Okay.
So we typically put together a big set of spec documents, and, we don't design the whole thing, but we lay out the requirements.
Is this something where, Ed, are we required to go with the lowest bidder, or what, in terms of coming back to us? So we would only get one bid back, whatever the lowest bid was, is that how that works?
We take the lowest bid, as long as they have everything presented correctly according to the documents.
Okay.
There is another way to go about that. In California, Government Code 4217 with energy projects, that we would encourage you to take advantage of for the solar project, not necessarily something you want to do on the energy efficiency, because it's easier to scope and it's a little more commodity. If you're doing the light replacement project, it makes all the sense in the world to do a low bid. But the solar thing can get rather complicated, and so we encourage our clients to look at a best value process instead of just a low bid process, because there's all kinds of qualifications that you want to be looking at, and their plan for getting in and out of your sites in a respectful way, in a sensitive way. So low bid can be pretty challenging on solar. It's a little more complicated.
Yeah, that makes sense, what you said, to do it the other way. Thank you.
So since this only takes us through phase 2, how much should we anticipate having to spend for phase 3?
Yeah, typically, the phase 2 work we do is about 2% of the construction cost, and a similar amount in the design and construction phase. The solar projects are mostly design build contracts, just as rough numbers. The number in here, this 54 or 41.7, is below the 2% mark by some amount. I figure in this one we can get into it, given our prior work, a little more effectively, given the size of the district, get through it more efficiently. But that's about what we look at. The energy efficiency projects will take a little less hand-holding, because the solar projects will be heavy construction projects. They'll be drilling foundations, and it's a big deal, and so we get out there and we do some oversight in how they do the electrical components of that work, and then help them test and commissioning systems too. So.
And would that phase also come out of Prop 39 funds?
The project budget that we help you put together for the solar project, and Prop 39 could be, is likely to be a funding source for that. But the solar program, the solar project alone, from what I recall, is just north of $3 million, if I'm remembering that right. And your Prop 39 allocation isn't that large. So we'd be looking at PPA, power purchase agreements, or prepaid lease, or looking for some other funding sources. The CEC is about to start up a zero interest loan program again, with a cap of about $3 million, so there could be a real nice fit if we can get you on the list for those funds.
So one question is kind of for Ed. Our district, one of our district goals is presenting a timeline of really a lot of these facility projects, which both of these conveniently fall into. And that's April for this board meeting is kind of what we're shooting for, whether we can do it earlier or not. So given that it's 3 months away roughly, I'm wondering if we wait till then, given your understanding of the timeline, is that too long to have kind of a when we want to complete things, especially if we want to reference this summer? It feels like if we don't present something to this body until April for things this summer, in terms of a timeline, and get buy-in there, that's a little compressed for a bidding opportunity. So I guess it's a question to Ed, informed by you, is are we looking to try and have pieces of that along these lines that we are looking at maybe this summer as an opportunity that'll come sooner in terms of the timeline communication, or what's the district's plan of attack there to?
For the solar or for the
For anything we're trying to tackle this summer, just trying to, if it falls into energy efficiency, it seems like we're going to want to know the timeline in terms of these step-by-step processes so that we can execute this summer. And April may be too far out there to get somebody jumping right on it in June is my concern.
Usually April's early enough for us to talk to projects. Solar, I don't know, I've never done it, so Russell would be it.
Solar takes a little longer. I do think with the other projects that we're envisioning, they will go much faster through a bid process and a new construction. The solar design phase alone, once you're in contract with the vendor, can take 60+ days just to get through.
On permitting.
And then there's DSA, depending on where we're trying to fit the arrays into, can be problematic at times.
So do we see any DSA, I mean, on the non-solar piece, do we see any DSA concerns if we don't have, kind of details in line by April?
From what I recall of the measures we were talking about, they're not heavy retrofit construction.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really think so. No.
Was all I was thinking about. Schedule.
One question, if you could just remind me, what was our Prop 39 draw again, I think we mentioned it.
It's around 95,000. For the current year.
Any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, further discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask, I'm not sure what the April date that Tyson was just referring to is, but I was assuming if we approve this, that you'd just start working on it now and we don't have to wait, right? I mean, what would?
The April date is just our district goal of presenting the facility timeline in terms of the projects and their timeline to us from the district to the board. So I was just,
Okay,
because these
all
are
the other projects or?
the projects.
All projects.
All projects.
So if something can come in earlier, and that's kind of where I was asking the question, that, or putting it out there, that if we don't want to wait for certain things, we shouldn't wait until April is where I was going, in terms of presenting or having an option.
Yeah, well, we've already approved things twice. Once last summer, we gave Ed go ahead to start working on projects last summer, and then earlier this fall at one point. So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by fall projects April.
Well, it's for discussion too.
Okay, so my question with this is, if we approve this tonight, what happens next? Are they going to just start working on this? And my main point is, personally, I'm in favor of going out with the energy efficiencies, and that being a separate track from solar, it seems like that is something that we would want them to set up to do this summer, so they would need to proceed in order to do that. And I'm not sure if you're saying that we have to wait till April before we actually.
No, so I was not saying we wait till April. What I was noting is that having something come to this board in January to get moving with a district goal that was aligned with presenting a timeline to us in April, we're ahead of ourselves, which is good.
Okay.
And if we didn't want to wait till April for something, I was throwing it out there that doesn't feel like we would need to. So
Yeah.
that's all I was referring to in terms of it.
Yeah. And the only other thing related to this that I'm thinking about is not the energy efficiencies, but the solar portion of it is a lot of money. And we also have later on the agenda discussion about portables. So at some point, we're going to be talking about, how much money altogether we have and prioritizing that funding to those whatever areas, prioritizing the dollars. So, but yeah, I'm basically okay with this, but I would like to, state that I would hope we could make sure the energy efficiencies could move ahead in front of the solar, so that something could be.
And I think we're hearing consensus on that, so,
Yeah.
and that seems like it should be the faster part anyway. So, do we have a motion on this item?
I move we approve the contract with Newcomb Anderson McCormick to conduct a study on energy efficiencies, climate control, and solar energy in the district.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion
So
passes.
do we not have to say for 69,000?
I think it's in
It's
there.
clear, okay.
Thank you. Okay, so
Ed's back.
contract with RGM and Associates for facilities priority project management.
So we have the large facility priority project list, along with the safety list. And all these projects, are going to be a little more than I can handle, so we're going to try to get a project management company in to help me with that. RGM has done several projects for the district in the past, and they've always done a very good job for us. They always look out for the good of the district, and they're always watching those RFIs and change orders on projects. They're currently doing the project management for us at the district office, which is going very well. The financial considerations, the hourly fee for the project manager is $130 per hour. And RGM has given us a full breakdown of their fees, and they're below. And the recommendation is that the board approves the contract with RGM at $130 per hour.
And do we have any sense of how many hours we're talking about?
Not hours, but I have costs from RGM. So the low would be $523,500, and the high would be, which is what OPSC costs are, is $679,656.
Over how much time?
However long it takes to do these projects. And I have
Which
Ralph
is a
Caputo here from
while.
RGM to answer any questions that you may have
The
about.
low, can you repeat the low amount again, please?
Yes. The low amount is $523,500, and the high amount was $679,656.
I don't think I asked my question properly. I was wondering just about the project management fees.
That is. That's project management for all the projects that we have lined up for the district.
So this is over years, Matt. This is the way I'm.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit about how, any more detail on that? How long a period of time? How did, I mean, you came up with this number somehow, or someone did. What does that mean?
We've gone through all the projects, and we're in the process of estimating them all. We've got about 85% of them done now. And once we have all these projects and we decide which ones we want to do and the priority we want to put them in, then we can come up with a schedule and give you a timeline of how long it's going to take to do all the projects. We obviously can't do that many projects in 1 year.
So by approving this item that's on for action, we're approving basically rates, which could extend up to that dollar amount.
Or more, I mean, that's
Or
just,
more, yeah,
or less. I mean,
or less.
what we're approving in front of me, in my mind, is we're approving a rate structure that's managed by the district for projects that the board prioritizes.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, makes me uncomfortable that it's so open-ended. I mean, there's no,
Was the project management included in the cost of the item for each of the items that we approved? Did it include, an administrative or whatever?
No, those are just construction.
So this is an additional add-on to what we already approved.
How, has this been done in the past, or I'm trying to think, how have we done, what have we done before? I know we have a lot of projects we're thinking about, but I'm kind of surprised here.
We've never done this many projects before. We've never had this many on a list at one time. It's quite a few projects to do all at once. But usually on the projects, like when we did modernization, we had a project manager for each project that we did to keep track of everything.
So I'm still reeling in shock for the number. And I don't think $130 an hour is too much, and I know we've got a huge list, but I was not ready for a number between $500,000 and $700,000 for project management. And as somebody who runs a business, I know how expensive it is to employ people, but it looks to me like we could pay somebody $150,000 a year plus $50,000 in benefits for 3 years and have a district employee doing this. And I know we've talked about it as a board, so I'm not trying to, I wasn't ready for this number at all. So I'm still reeling.
So 500,000 to 525, I mean, that amounts to just over 4,000 hours at, call it a middle of the road rate.
1 year is 2080 hours.
Yeah, so I mean, you're basically getting
Full-time
bare minimum
employee
as a
for
full-time
2 years.
employee for 2 years for this rate, for the bare minimum. I know, I mean, knowing what, it'll be 4 years before everything's done. I mean,
I would say
before
so.
everything's done, that's on that list, depending on how the list shakes out. Some of it may take longer and there's a break between, but, I mean, the way I view this is it's really, it's a reasonable rate, and I agree with what Matt said. I mean, especially since, you know, computers and travel and all that stuff's included. Because I've seen rates higher than this, and then they tack on all kinds of other
Plus.
Yeah. So the rate's reasonable. I think where we're out of context as a group probably is saying, okay, if you complete umpteen $1 million worth of work over 3 years, how much does it cost to administer that outside of what Ed already has to do? So that, I mean, that's in essence what I think this is all about, right? It's to facilitate, to make sure Ed can do what Ed needs to do and leverage another resource.
The project manager also comes up with the scope of work for like all the roofing projects. They have to come up with the scope for that. All the asphalt projects, they come up with the scope and specifications for that. So it's not just stand there and tell them, you know, go nail that 2x4. So,
Yeah.
as Tyson knows, it's a big project.
Well, but what about Matt's point about you could just hire someone to work for the district to do it, or even hire someone like as an independent contractor? I don't know if we can do that as a district.
Well, that's kind of what we're doing if we did this.
Well, this is hiring a consultant.
It's
Basically, an independent contractor.
All right. Well, okay, then back to the other point. What about just hiring an employee?
So, you know, one of the things we do in the district, I think, has worked really well, and I've been able to, since I've been doing it, I've been on board for 5 years, is I've seen, relative to how we structure technology in the district. Right now, before we've had different models of employees to handle technology here, and now we're in IT essentially as an independent contractor at a high cost, and they do a great job. So it's not, I mean, I get it, that this is something that people do and it works really well, and I see the benefit to it. I just wasn't ready for the big number. I was ready for whatever. I was ready for, I just wasn't ready for a big number. That's all. I see the benefit to it. I understand the costs of retaining employees and benefits and liabilities and everything else. So I see, again, I see the rate as a very fair rate, and I know that RGM's done a great job for us. I'm not questioning RGM at all. I'm just having a hard time swallowing the number. I wish there was a different way to look at the number.
I have Ralph here from RGM if you'd like to. Ralph?
Basically, it's based on over $12 million worth of work, some of which will be formally designed by the architect, but a lot of it is it's still undefined. And so we extrapolated it based on probably about a 3-year period, projects coming in, not kind of up and down. And so you're not approving an overall amount, you're just approving a cap. We're on an as-needed, as-requested basis. The work of the architect is simple. They'll design plans and we'll simply help Ed facilitate the bidding and the construction, the closeout, keep an eye on all the costs and quality control. On all of the maintenance projects, they could be 3 big projects, they could be 50 little tiny projects. We don't know that yet. So we sort of kind of extrapolated what we feel is kind of a worst case scenario, figuring a lot of the maintenance type projects. As Ed said, there's no architect involved, so you're not going to pay an architect's fee. We'll likely go directly to the trade contractor rather than the general contractor. So if like you're doing roofing projects, we'll work with a roofing consultant, save the architect's fees, and deal directly with roofing bidders, so you're not paying a general contractor to sit on the site. But those could be multiple projects over a long period of time. So it was based more on a percentage of construction. Our fees generally run, if they're big projects, short timelines, they could be in the 4% range, and if they're, long projects and a lot of small contracts involved, it could be in the 7% range. So it was based on a real kind of cursory review of each of the projects that are expected to be formal and a whole laundry list of maintenance, not knowing what years or how they'll be folded in. So it's basically just a cap, and it'll continue to be massaged as we start to get involved and start to develop the projects with Ed and the architect, see what the district wants to accomplish when. So there's a lot of front-end work and planning, but it is variable and it is loose at this point. So our commitments to not overtax you or be as reasonable as we can and prudent going forward, but when asked to put a cap to it, it was based on a laundry list of projects and kind of a worst case scenario of how they can unfold. If that helps.
So you mentioned $12 million in projects, but I don't think we've approved $12 million anywhere close to $12 million in projects. I thought all of Appendix E, if we approved all of Appendix E, I think is the same list, is like $4 million. Aside from the solar
We didn't have costs for all of the projects yet, and some of the costs were just placeholders in there. We're putting costs to them right now.
And so this estimate is for $12 million of work.
So when I've been in similar shoes, I've typically had to bid my rates against at least 2 other folks. Because there's some, and no offense, these rates, like I've said already, they're competitive, so it's not like there's a perception that something's being gouged or anything. I think a few of these, I see some that could go up, maybe some that could go down, but the point being is coming up with a rate structure that can be a competitive process. If that makes the board more amenable to it. I think the other piece, I'm not so much looking at the ceiling. I don't read this to be, okay, we're going to spend $500,000. I think that, getting an understanding of the plan by which, the facilities are going to leverage this rate structure, I think that's important. But the 500 comes out to me, almost 400,000 amounts to 3%, and 3% on over 4 years on that much money, that's rock bottom. So if you look, you can look at it as volume, or you can look at it just hours over time for somebody to have consistency. So
I don't have a problem with the hourly rate at all. I have a problem with hearing that these projects are $12 million, and I have a problem with agreeing to a contract when I don't even see a contract in here. I see a rate structure. I don't know, is there a termination clause? Is there a cap listed in the contract? I just don't know what we're agreeing to other than saying we're hiring you, right? Which I don't have a problem with, and I think it's probably a good idea to have some, you know, project manager in some way or another helping with this work. I
It
guess it
seems
would be
like
nice
it's
to have
just
more
a standard
clarity.
time and material agreement,
Well,
like,
it
that's all I've
says,
seen.
okay, except that it does, on the agenda, it says contract. I'm not really sure if it is a contract or not either, because it doesn't say contract in these back pages. It just says hourly rate.
It's approval to negotiate a contract.
What's that?
It would be approval to negotiate a contract, to enter into a negotiated contract.
Okay.
And so these are the same rates that we use for the district office, of which went through a number of a number of other competitors.
Like I said, I don't think it's a problem with the rate. I think it's more hearing
The total cost.
the total,
Yeah,
the total
no,
potential
certainly.
cost and not
Certainly.
understanding exactly what, you know, projects and what money is being associated with all of that.
Yeah, if this is to approve, to negotiate a contract, it seems to me we would want to do that for projects that we know we've approved, but why do that for projects we haven't even approved yet, which we may or may not approve? And
Well, then there's no charge for them if you don't do it. You're only up there.
well, I know, but by saying, this is an action item for us. By approving this, it looks like we're approving this for, this could lead up to $500,000 or $600,000 and it won't come back to us. That's the impression I have, and yet I'm not really comfortable with that.
I don't know that I read it that way. I read it,
How do you read it?
well, I read it that, for instance, said project comes through Ed's fingertips and he's trying to plan the work and he's buried. He reaches out to these folks, they need an estimator, scheduler, and whether there's an architect already involved or what have you. And there's gonna be time in corralling that so that we can get a bid package on the street so that the actual district can then review it, as opposed to putting it all on Ed. So it goes back to Matt's point of view that, there's a lot of money to spend. Do we want to have an in-house employee versus someone else helping
Okay.
Ed in the facility department? Because at the end of the day, in order to get something accomplished, like actually built,
You need a project
Ed has
manager.
to leverage something to get some words on a paper, some details out, a scope, a schedule, something tangible by which to then measure the market and then execute.
Yeah, of course. If you
So-
do all these projects, you need a project manager.
If you do one project, you
Yeah,
need,
all right, one project, you need a project manager. That's not the issue. The issue is, it's here before us now. It could, you negotiate a contract, based on this, if we say, yes, go ahead, then you're gonna negotiate a contract and it's out of our hands and it feels like there's no end to it. And yet we haven't approved all those projects. I would feel more comfortable if we said, for, I don't know, at least for the projects we've already approved or something. Something more
So I guess
specific.
here's another way to look at it. We have an attorney, right, that we have hourly rates agreed to,
Or we're in IT.
or Marin IT. We have, there's level of rate approvals, and then we as a board evaluate the superintendent on how well they manage their fiscal and otherwise, issues that come up. We have to entrust that these rates are good and that they'll be not abused or, not used inappropriately. At some point, I'm looking at this as, how do we empower the district to get the job at hand done, as opposed to, okay, there's 10,000 more hours, oh my God, or there's 50 hours on this, is that appropriate? I don't know. Without diving into it for 2 hours, I couldn't probably tell you. And I don't know that my role is to dive into it for 2 hours and tell you. So, Ed's charged with going out and getting this work done, right? And the
It
superintendent's
sounds like
giving
you're
it
trying to convince us.
Well, no, I'm trying to tell you that I don't view this as a $500,000 issue. I view this as Ed's looking for a way in which to facilitate a lot of different projects and to help prioritize and get these things rolling, which we, as a
Yes,
board,
I
charged him
understand.
with doing. So you know, that's why I mentioned that there's ways in which you can put this in more of a competitive process if that's the concern. I mean, or, you know, maybe there's a way to just talk about it and say, okay, well, what do we see this summer, right? Maybe RGM can say, if we're doing X number of dollars this summer, based on what you've seen, how many man hours over the course from, say, go in the spring till this summer through execution would we be looking at? Is that a third of the $500,000 worth of hours? Is it 1,000 hours? Is it, I mean, if you want to bite it off in terms of how many hours.
I think it also depends on how, I mean, if we want to push all these projects to be completed in the next 2 years, it's going to take a lot of project management time because we're going to overwhelm what we can do in the district. If we drag everything out for 10 years, we'll probably use less project manager time, but we'll take 10 years to build the projects. That's the way
I'm comfortable with approving this. I think the rate's fair. I really like the job RGM's done with us on the district office, working so closely with Ed. I have all the confidence in the world that they'll do a great job for our district on this stuff.
I think it's time for public comment. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none. Other thoughts of that?
Yes, I would like clarification. If we approve this, does the contract come back to us? Or what do we see again about this issue?
Yes, the contracts come back to
Okay, so we're just approving them to go ahead and write a contract.
approving the bids.
We're approving the rates, thank you. It's not really that clear in here what we are approving. Vote yes on this. So we're approving the rates, and then you'll negotiate a contract. When you negotiate a contract, is it tied to projects? Is it going to have anything tied to a certain time period, or what?
We can do it per project if we want.
Yeah.
I mean, another way to look at it is, you know, Ed needs help in order to estimate the projects, meet with the architects, help decide what's going to be formally designed, what's going to be implemented as maintenance projects. So we need to start with him to get that going. We've done a measurable amount so far. But then with each project or at some point in the future, we can come back, once everything's defined, we can come back with a lot more definition and a lot better structure. There's a couple of ways, I don't know how your board agenda was written, so, I mean, I can give you all the assurances in the world, but I mean, I think, you know, with the contract will be, you know, a list or a scale based on the type and scope of projects. It'll probably take a couple months to get those defined.
I think one,
So it's
not
just
to cut you off, but to interject too, I mean, I think one important thing would be nice to see is, and I think the district's already planning on this because we've talked about it, but keeping track of what, say, a consultant in this capacity is working on. I mean, whether it's roofing at this site or it's solar at this site, or, I mean, making sure that we don't just have one giant bucket that they're charging to, but understanding, so that the public understands, so that we understand what level of effort's being applied to different projects. I think that's, and I know you,
Yeah, we break it down.
there's a way in which that's done. I'm more comfortable in that sense of, you know, the other thing, so that everybody's on the board here, is the way I read this too, these rates through the course of the duration of this program. I mean, we're locking in a rate for, if this stuff goes on for 3 years, I mean, there's a chance that we're getting a competitive rate 3 years down the line too, more so. So there's a benefit to picking someone and locking it in over a longer haul.
Yeah, and I just want to add too that, you know, since you mentioned the public, you know, as elected school board members, you know, my other thought is someone in the public is not going to understand, they can't see projects being built yet, and they're going to think, why isn't Ed just doing it? Why are we hiring someone else? You know, they aren't going to have that understanding of this whole discussion we have. But, you know, obviously as we start approving more projects and things start happening, that will be clear. So, okay, thank you.
This item is on for action. Do you have a motion?
Move we approve the contract with RGM and Associates for facilities priority project management.
Second.
Are we approving the proposal of rates? Is that same?
I think we're approving what's,
Board approves the RGM proposal for the project management fees. Second.
all
So
in
what-
favor?
Excuse me, what is the wording again? What are we
The
approving?
recommendation is what I'm,
The recommendation approves the RGM proposal of $130 per hour for project management and other fees. Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed and unanimous. Thank you, Ed. One more. Agreement with Corovan.
busy holiday, huh?
Exactly. And to relocate district office to new building.
So Corovan is the company that moved us from the original district office to here. That was paid for by Pulte. The move back is paid for by the district. Move here, they did a great job. When people were here and trying to yank them in different directions, they never locked them down and did everything we asked. Very good job. To move us back, it's $8,060.38. And recommendation is to approve the $8,060.38 to move us back into the district office.
Any questions for Ed?
Do we know how much it costs to move? Did we see that bill?
To move us here,
Yeah.
I think it was, we did two moves. We did maintenance and the district office, and I want to say it was 16,000. Right in that area.
Okay. Any comments from the public on this item? This item is on for action and further discussion.
I move the approved action item F, agreement with Corovan to relocate district office to new building.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain?
Abstain. So, 4 votes for aye with Mason Campbell's abstain. Okay. Next we have the item from the consent calendar, the minutes. So Sarah, you wanted to talk about minutes?
Yes, thank you.
The amended minutes.
The amended minutes on page 2, action 42-14, it says board committee assignments. The board would, so I wanted to, that night we agreed on who was on what committee. I thought it would be in the minutes, and I would like to request that we amend the minutes to include that information. So that there's a public record, if the public wants to know who's on what committee, it's in the minutes. It just seems pretty straightforward. I've seen other districts do that. And I think it would be a good idea for us to do it just in terms of transparency's sake. What we have here doesn't include who's on what committee. So I guess I could say that in the form of a motion. Was that what you would like, or do you want
Well,
to
we have to
discuss?
take public comment before we do the
Oh,
motion.
okay.
So I'll take public comment. Any public comment on this agenda item?
In thinking about the,
You can introduce yourself.
Charles Shen, the president, in thinking about it as being a transparency issue, I think it makes sense that anyone looking at these documents can see who's on the various committees. So that's my
Other comments on this item? Seeing none, further discussion? More motion?
I'll move that we adopt the minutes for December 9th with the amendment, the amended minutes of December 9th, thank you. Amended for action item 42-14, board committee assignments, and including the board members who are on which committees.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Opposed?
Okay, this item passed 3-2 with Bruce Rossiter and Moran opposed. Okay, next is item number F. Tyson, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little clarity in terms of what the goal of the goal is. It looks like a great thing.
Is that a pun?
Sort of. I mean, I see it, when I read it, there's a part of it that's somewhat professional development and another part that's really just enabling us to, better understand and help our special ed folks, so. I just wanted to hear a little more about it because the description was pretty quick.
Okay. So Goalbook presented to our SELPA in spring of last year regarding this new online tool, which would really position special educators kind of ahead of the curve as far as aligning to the Common Core. Often we're years behind, believe it or not. And so this really is and we're one of the few districts in the area that is really looking at doing something about this and getting ahead, as I said, as we roll out Common Core adoption. And so it's an online tool which would enable a teacher to look at their student profile. Let's say a student has a mild disability, they're a couple years behind grade level in reading. It would allow them to create a goal in a certain area of reading, say it's decoding, that would be differentiated along with tools and resources to help them, how do I achieve that goal? And it's tiered to, we might have a child who's mildly behind, moderately severe. So we may have, as we have, 8th graders who have very few reading skills. They're in the severe category. So Goalbook would help design a goal that would enable them to attend to a 8th grade core standard, but at their level, which is perhaps even at a preschool level. And so it would provide some direction and guidance to the teacher on both how to implement that goal, but also the kind of instruction. And also it lets us, goals are measured 3-4 times a year, and how that child is progressing across that goal. And we piloted this with a few teachers in October of this year. And so Goalbook allowed us to go online, let's see what this looks like. If you're interested, teachers seem to love it. It really changed sort of their frame of mind on, and they're quite anxious about how do I implement Common Core. And it really aligns us with what the general educators are doing, because we have Common Core, which is all students in special education are general ed students with disabilities. These are common goals for them to be able to implement or at least have access to core material in the general education classroom.
So this will be used for all students with IEPs, or
Correct.
is it just for
All students with IEPs.
And it's 5.5 year?
Right. And looking at that, it was sort of the best value for what we could get with our one-time money. A neighboring district is also looking at Goalbook, but their plan is to do it for a year. They're using Common Core money, but that money will be, their plan's already developed. Well, how are you going to pay for that in a couple of years if you want to keep it? Well, they'll have to have an ongoing cost. So we'll see what we can get from this. And I think
certainly 5 years, and working together with Lorraine, she was, well, how about if we look at something that is a greater amount of time for this one-time money that we have? And it just seemed a good cost-effective way to get a good best value out of this, we said one-time money.
Well, thank you for the a little more in-depth, because I am a fan of a lot of these tools that are out there now that provide some sort of dashboarding. I mean, there's clarity, because that way it's not just, you know, running some report that you hope is right. You actually get real-time feedback, and a lot of these students can use, you know, some real-time feedbacks.
And I see it as a nice complement to our online electronic-based IEP, which 3 years ago we were in paper, the paper world, writing documents that were all in paper. We're all 100% electronic IEP, and it's transformed how we work together as educators and professionals. This is another tool, part of that component. And we have them tentatively scheduled for, I kept telling them months ago, can we get this sort of on the radar, and hopefully our expenditure plan will be approved as it was earlier, so this is coming at a good time of after that expenditure plan. We'll have them for a 2-hour professional development on the 27th of this month. Goalbook.
Okay, is there any other questions? Comments from the public on this item?
Charles Shannon, President. Sounds like somebody's really going to support general ed and special ed educators, and so, you know, as an OEA representative, I'm very supportive of anything that supports the work that we do with our students. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles. Oh, any other comments about it? Okay, this item is on for action.
I move we approve the contract with Goalbook.
I seconded it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approved unanimous. I'd like to have us take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back to our last discussion items, if that's okay, so we're back in 53.
I drive by it all the time.
The neighbor's parents, the blonde hair, was that somebody in your house?
Yeah, it was.
That's right, exactly. That's not the first one.
I saw today on we have district restrictions. Somewhere, there's a county board of education. I signed it.
Thursday?
No, they said there's a copy of the thing I got.
Yeah, there's a governor's budget update.
Governor's budget. Oh, yeah, the 22nd, right? They said the other one's canceled, and now the advisory will go on the 22nd.
So the one on the 16th
Yes,
So I'm wondering if the CCO, why we are doing it for the meeting.
the county school boards association.
Oh, school board, there's another one. It is next week. I don't remember the schedule.
Yeah, it's the school boards association, when they canceled the one, and they said instead we're having it to be capital advisors, but it's still at the county office. He's gonna be on the 22nd.
That's the one I was.
Oh, that's when I signed up?
It's, I have my calendar for you, it's next week.
Yeah.
It's on a Wednesday.
I got this, because I think I signed up for it. This is the thing I printed off. So it says here, cancel on the 16th. Instead, they're doing it on the 22nd. Today.
So I didn't know they can't, I didn't know about that.
So my question there was, is everyone else on the same terms? Everyone, all of the board members might.
I didn't get it. I got a notice of the it didn't say for schools.
No, okay. So, yeah, this thing, this thing is the County School Board Association. They canceled their meeting and told us to go to this one. This was put on by capital advisors.
And so what they've done is they've sent administrators
To this.
to this, but they didn't tell us board members.
Yeah, I think this has just happened today. I think they just decided today, why are we doing two? Let's just tell them to go to the other meeting. So, anyway.
Back in those days,
It just came midday there, so
I'm looking at
Just to get people back in.
Okay, we're gonna reconvene.
time this morning.
Yeah, that's what happens when you start to talk.
Okay, so we'll reconvene, and our next item up for discussion is discussion item D, portable building options. Okay.
So at the last board meeting, information was requested for the different options with portables. One of the options to look at was to look at prefab buildings. Mobile Modular is the company that released the 12 portables from, the 12 leased portables. And we also leased one from the Contra Costa County Office of Education and one from William Scott's company. Buying the 12 units from Mobile Modular would cost $402,934. And I don't have the cost estimate for this county or William Scott's one yet, the last two. There's also a demo cost if we want to take out portables that we own, want to get rid of them. Those are also attached between $9,500 to $12,000 for the 30 by 32 units, and it's between $7,500 to $9,000 for the 24 by 40 units. Prefab units, a standard one with no frills is about $150 a square foot, and for the 14 leased units, that would be $2,148,000. For the 17 owned units, it would be $3,240,000. And then they also make a really nice one, they call it the Gen 7, and it's LEED rated, it's very green building, and that comes for $285 a square foot. That includes the pad and everything for the building. That would be $4 million for 14 of them, and a little over $6 million for 17 of them. And if we wanted to do all 31, it would be about $10,237,000. These are all from a company called American Modular. It's just one of the prefab companies I picked. A lot of the schools in the area use it, or a lot of the districts in California use it. And as I said, they're energy efficient prefab buildings that meet the CHPS and the LEED standards for green schools. They come with a 5-inch slab foundation. They're all steel frame. They can be built 180 feet wide without a seismic joint. They can also be stacked 2-story. They look pretty good in their brochure. And they're engineered for California Seismic Zone 4. And these buildings can be designed, built, and installed in 90 days. So it's pretty fast, amazing. I have a video of them putting one up. It's amazing how fast they can do it. And this item is for discussion only.
Questions from the board?
First question is, are we zone 4? And next question is, could you remind me what's the cost of a standard portable, the type that we have, if we were to purchase one?
It depends on the size and how nice of one you get. They can go between 46 and 60,000.
Okay. And did you happen to, I guess you just have to do the math, but how does that, I'm thinking, how does that compare to this? These prices are for 14 units.
You can take the cost that Old Module wants for us to buy them out at 400,000. It comes out to about 33,000 the portable. I would still be paying for the portables, the old portables. I also had Mobile Modular get us a cost if we wanted to buy a 24 by 40 right now from them, and it's $395 a month. And our rates go between $400 and $1,200 what we're paying now per month.
What's the $395 a month?
$395 is if we want to go buy a 24 by 40 portable right now to replace an old one we have. We pay $395 a month.
To just add to our leases.
But we don't have a lease that small out of any of ours.
And if you do that, how many years are you leasing it for? Or is it?
They'll lease it for anybody you want. It's usually either 36 or 60 months, 48, 60.
All right.
Is that priced on a new unit? Or refurb?
It's on a refurb.
Well, these are the I'll save my discussion. But, well, let me ask you one more question. Have you seen these? What do you think of this type of building? You said other districts use it.
They put one up for the district office in Rodale for John Sweat School District. It's a 2-story with an elevator. It looks like a great building. I haven't heard anything bad about it from the person that I know that works there. It's been there for 5 or 6 years. It looks like a regular building, not a portable.
And they're supposed to last a long time?
They should. They're all steel construction now. And instead of a flat roof, now they put A-frames on them so you don't get the rust problems in the walls. And it should be a better product than a regular portable.
Is the demo and removal fee that you mentioned in there, is that only if you're talking about removing but not replacing? So is the cost, for example, if you're removing something but replacing it with a prefab, the demo and removal fee wouldn't be tacked on in addition
It
to
is.
that?
If we have an old portable and we want to get rid of that portable one we own, then we're going to demo it and they're going to, and then we have to pay the fees to get rid of it. And there's also disconnecting only
but basically this is sort of discussion stuff, so I don't have a question.
I have a good question. I have a question. So first of all, maybe more Lorraine, what's our monthly cost again that we pay to lease these portables? Do you happen to know? Because to buy out the 12 units and will cost us $42,000. So we spend $400,000 now, we own them, and we don't pay anything. But do you know what we pay a month right now?
You can't correct that before.
I don't know if I brought it with.
Ask your next question, I'll find it.
I was having my head like 100,000 a year. I don't know if that's accurate.
But I know of those 14 portables, it ranges between $400 and $1,200 a month for the cost of those portables. But I don't know what the total cost is each month.
So a mobile modular, there's 2,300, it's like 2,400 bucks, call it, in our warrants right now, and I'm just scanning through, so.
So maybe 200 bucks a month. That's not more than that. And well, I guess my second question is, and this maybe is more for, I don't know, Ed or Tyson, or if you built like a brick and mortar building, how much would you spend in square foot cost?
500 foot,
No, that's too much.
300,
That's too much.
350?
Yeah, well, it depends on if you're adding plumbing and, I mean, do you need sinks in them? Like a science lab's gonna probably be up there, but.
No, but I mean, I'm trying to comparison, if we prefab thing versus a real school thing.
Standard classroom.
Well, I guess I'd answer your question with a question, Chris, in the sense that I'd wanna know of these options, what the warranty duration on them is. Like how long they're built to last, so to speak, because, you know, if you factor life cycle into them, maybe they're still cheaper, maybe they're not, I don't know. I mean, I'm not opposed to a prefab smart system that goes up quick. I mean, it's usually cheaper, not just because of it's prefab, but because you can, the schedule, you have a lot less labor. And, you know, if it's all pre-wired and plumbed and it shows up and the wall goes in place, you've figured it out all ahead of time, so you don't have any on-site. You can minimize your exposure there. So it's smart, and the industry's going there in many ways. I mean, there's very expensive projects that are trying to prefab pieces of them, as opposed to just thinking of it as like trailers, right?
But Tyson, are you saying, do you see a difference between a prefab building and a portable? Or are we talking, yes, significant difference?
Well, I think it would depend on which prefab. I mean, I think you can get a prefab real, cheap building. As far as Department of State architecture, I think, I'm inclined personally as a board member and a human being to lead towards the greener materials. I mean, there's a lot of portables out there that still have formaldehydes and some things embedded within the construction that you don't want to really put anywhere near kids, right? So you're going to pay a little more for getting the right materials and then getting durability. But you can get, prefab stuff that, and can you get a portable that's as durable and as, I don't know, they may make one out there, but it's probably not Mobile Modular making it. It's somebody in Canada, right, that needs to throw them up in like the 2 weeks of thaw they have, so. But Mobile Modular this month was 3,600, so between the two, that's $6,000 that I've found so far, Chris.
$6,000 a month, maybe-ish.
I just asked Tyson because you had strong feelings about portables, and I kind of was just lumping this prefab building as a euphemism for portable.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'd have to see them, like pictures of them, and understand them a little better to truly qualify that. But no, I think building. I think the idea of putting a siding or a stucco or a conventional frame system up I mean, it's kind of the old way of building, especially if you only have the summer window. If you're building a brand new school that nobody's impacted, it's one thing, but if you're trying to knock something out, a serious addition on a school property, it's probably a viable, because then it's just a matter of getting that foundation in place and the utilities there and spending 2 months fastening the thing together.
Any other questions or?
I mean, I guess I'd be interested to, and I'll probably do a little Google searching or call Ed, but, you know, I'd be curious to understand where classrooms, any local, you know, applications of this. I know there are some new schools going in that are prefab components, but there are also some that are going in right now that are more conventional too. So it'd be good to understand if there's anybody local, and by local I mean, you know, the broader Bay Area that's kind of, and I'm sure the sales reps will tell you for free,
Yeah.
hey, this is going on here.
Well, we saw something like this at the conference in December, and I remember there was a couple companies that had not only portables, but these prefab buildings, and they looked, I don't know if it was the same company here, I don't remember the name right now, but they looked like regular buildings. You couldn't tell it was a prefab, and they said you can put it up very quickly in the summer. So.
We'll have some more discussion, but I'll take public comments, so, Charles?
Charles Shano, your president. I'm really excited to see that we're considering the prefab buildings as long as they're green. I think that something that's more environmentally healthy for our students, teachers, and anyone else volunteers in those rooms is important. And something that's also more aesthetic. At Glorieta, we have several portables, and I've spent some time in them, and they're depressing, and they don't seem healthy, and they're not aesthetic. And it's really sad that we're renting something that's not really conducive to learning and feeling healthy. So, I didn't say being healthy, but just having a feeling of healthfulness. They're kind of drab, like Tyson had mentioned before. So, as ODA president, I think anything that improves the environment for learning is critical. So, this looks good to me.
Bill, that's just an observation. I looked up the website while you were talking, and they've got, the website shows photovoltaics on top, so maybe these may have an implication for what you're doing with energy audit.
I'm Colleen Sullivan, teacher. I've worked for over 15 years in the district in a portable. I really love working in portables. The shape of the portable, the rectangle, is more conducive for the layout in the classroom. And the fact that the portables had their own energy pack on them is really great, especially after the experience of doing open house in the dark at Sleepy Hollow, when all the electronics were on and couldn't support the whole situation. But my concern, actually, based on that experience, is there are 3 portables in particular at Del Rey that are just so dilapidated, on the ones that are on the playground. And I would really hope that the district would do something about those particular ones. I think they really are unhealthy and not conducive to learning. And the range on some of the portables now in our district goes from dilapidated to just very tired. So kudos for looking into this.
Other comments from the public? Okay, so let's.
I have another question for Ed. What about heat, cooling? I know that was, for me, as far as the Del Rey portables, that was a concern, because I know that the portables there all had to use, electric heating or something, and it just seems so, there's so many portables there, and there's so much electric heat. So what do these do for heating and cooling? This prefab.
Electric heat pumps.
They are the same?
They're a lot more energy efficient than what the old ones we had.
They are.
Same thing.
They're still electric, but they're more efficient. Okay, and do you happen to know anything about the comment about solar on the roof? Would we be able to do that if we had this type of prefab building, or?
When I was looking at prefab buildings, there were some applications with solar roofs on them, but I didn't get costs on.
We'd have to go through DSA, I suppose, for that.
Well, for any of it.
Yeah.
For any of it, okay.
9 really, really old portables, and then there's the least portables and all the rest. You know, and I sort of focus because I look at, you know, I mean, I think ideally you probably do, I mean, maybe ideally you put in real buildings, but I think, you know, prefab homes that I've seen, some of them are beautiful. I mean, I don't know what these prefabs look like, but, you know, I like the idea. I think the total cost is more than you probably have. So, you know, I don't, maybe that's sort of our goal down the road is to replace all portables, but, you know, I'm looking at, well, if you did 9 of them, that'd be 3.3 million, or if you just replace them with newer portables, that would be 450, 500,000. You know, I'd like to see something done with those. On the leased ones, you know, my initial thought was, you know, buying out those leases, if we are spending 100,000, which is what I had in my mind, so maybe we need to get some clarity on how much we're spending a year on those. But, you know, to spend $400,000 and save annually $100,000 seems like a pretty
I found
worthwhile
another
decision.
$486.
So it'd be
we're up
nice
to
to get that
6,500.
total and
Right.
see what we are spending a year, because I did have in my head that we were doing around 100,000. So it would be nice to get that information. I would say, you know, my initial thoughts when I was reading this was like, yeah, you know, let's like buy out those leases, let's replace the portables in one fashion or another, those 9 old ones. If you're really looking at a plan to replace all your portables, I don't know if it makes sense then to buy out 14 leases right before you're planning on doing something that would replace all of them. So that, you know, is my only hesitation on, you know, my thoughts on the lease buyout portion. But, you know, I would also, I agree with Tyson, it's kind of nice to see what we're talking about and what these things would look like, and it would be nice to find out how much we actually spend here on those leases. And like I said, I mean, I think the discussion, you know, in my mind should be around, you know, do we want to replace all the portables or some of the portables? Do we want, you know, how much support is there for which portables, replacing in what fashion, with what?
I mean, my view is, I mean, I'd love to have 10 million to just do them all, but you know, that's prohibitive. And like we discussed before, there's and the unfortunate is, the ones that we lease are the ones that are not as bad as the horrible ones, the ones that we're owners of. So, I mean, I think we have to separate it a little bit out as far as there's the financial benefits of buying out the leases, and then there's the making the schools a better place by upgrading from a portable to a normal building. So I think those are unfortunately two separate discussions. It'd be a lot simpler if the worst buildings were the ones that we could just buy out and just get rid of them, but it's not.
But you do have to also distinguish, I think, between the, you know, 54-year-old buildings, you know, as was discussed, some of them, you know, at Del Rey and Glorieta, I think.
Well, we went into that one kindergarten one at Del Rey that was like double wide, it's like super nice.
No, right,
So, I mean,
that's
there's
where the newer one.
Yeah, it's not.
Newer one, yeah.
So yes, from
Right, so
from
I think there's
cost
a
perspective,
prioritization
maybe it
that
makes sense
needs
to
to
buy
be-
it out, but from upgrading the school, much less so, for that particular.
We might,
Those are also
my-
1,200 square foot buildings, the kindergarten rooms.
I mean, my thought on this, Chris, is the 10 million doesn't really scare me. What it does is it reaffirms in my mind that we probably have to have a broader conversation with the community and come up with some different options and see what, because I think this community would probably get behind if we were, as a board, leveraging some of our money towards this to then raise the funds necessary to actually do something. Because we have, I mean, if it's $10 million to replace, I mean, that's a significant chunk of money to start talking about outside of what we have with Pulte and all of our other needs, because we don't have enough, but we have enough need. And so that, what it does for me is it shows that, yes, we still need to, I guess, talk about that longer view, how we solve. Because some of these buildings are going to get to the point, probably while some of our children are still in the district, that the ones we own, that we don't want to use at all anymore. And then there's the continue to lease. I mean, is that the right thing to do? Are they the right buildings to own? I mean, if we're going to put that money into them, I don't know.
I mean, I guess that's why I was starting to think, well, you know, maybe you do, you know, still have that thought about buying out those leases, but look at, you know, how can we have a goal of maybe replacing all of them, but start with the worst ones and come up with a plan. I mean, obviously, we'd be looking at a bond, you know, but coming up with a plan for, do we want to try to replace all of these, and how could we do that, and is there community support for it?
I mean, there are architects that are planners that provide basically the onset of service to do that and understand what the need is, and then understand how to bring that and analyze whether a bond is even going to happen, right? So that's something that's, if it was just one or two or three, I think we'd be solving it right now, but it's
That's not it. If we could fix the whole problem for $1.5 million, $2 million, that's a different story than the 10 we. Because again, we mentioned it earlier, we have solar that is going to cost money, and potentially some of that's going to come from a different pot, but we can't do everything without a bond, and so and we're not going to make any decisions tonight. But I think I'm hearing consensus that this is an interesting option for us. I think we should keep exploring it. We need to have some thoughts down the road, potentially, if there were a bond, like Tyson was saying, what you put on the bond. I mean, because it has to be things that people are interested in. Yeah, I think that's a lot of good thoughts.
Well, then I'd like to keep this as sort of an active, ongoing discussion, and maybe if we had like an update on where we are with, you know, the updates on pricing, on the various items that we've already approved, sort of have that as, you know, a spreadsheet in front of us and help us sort of visualize where we are and what we, you know, what we have left and what we can work with and how do we want to plan for the future.
So, as far as the timeline, I mean, I think I agree with what's been said about wanting to think of the whole big picture, and the $10 million doesn't scare me either in terms of thinking about what to do, because I think, you know, we have so many portables and so many of them are so old that need replacing that we really need to consider what to do on a bigger level. We're not talking about just a few. So if you consider that, and then, you know, yes, we'd have to prioritize and everything, but if we did need to go out for a bond, this is 2014, and we want to go in an even year, you know, so it's not like we would want to take a lot of time thinking about this. We would want to, you know, if we're going to do something about the portables, and if we're going to do solar, and if we add that together, that's going to be over the amount of money we have. And then if we want to continue considering doing that, we don't have a lot of options if we don't consider a bond. And then it becomes, are we talking about next November, or are we talking about 2 years from now? Because, you know, if it's an odd year, you have to get a 2/3 vote, and that's just much more
You can
prohibitive.
also finance solar in different ways. So
Yeah.
that you don't
Well,
own the system, so it could be
right,
expensive.
and that, right. But there's also there's the whole solar financing conversation that's important to this. But you also have the issue of, if you were to go out for a bond, is that more palatable to voters if it's for things like building replacement portables versus solar? I don't know the answer to that, but that's something we should
Probably depends on the people.
consider. Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm all in favor of continuing to Julie's point too, that keeping the discussion going. I think getting more of an informed discussion and understanding our options, or at least having the district empowered to understand their options. Whether it's, a true brick and mortar that's say, 300 plus a square foot, or it's this, or it's something else that we haven't found yet. I mean, how we replace the portables, I mean, I want to keep talking about it until we solve it, because I believe it's necessary. What it looks like, I don't know yet, but I think there's a palette personally in this community to improve the real aging infrastructure we have on our campuses, and what that looks like. There's going to be a few opinions.
I think it'd be interesting to even go as far as find out exactly what it would cost to replace the portables on the playground at Del Rey. Let's come up with a specific number.
Is that-
And/or the old unit at Gloria. We could take them by age.
Well, there's 9,
Well, what do you
Del
mean?
Rey and Gloria.
Yeah, I mean, you can estimate
But where
it
you
based
think
on
to
this
get
information.
To get specific information with various replacement options, in other
Yeah.
words, prefab versus new portable.
To make a more informed decision. It sounds like we have consensus that we aren't happy on the board with 54-year-old portables and our kids and our teachers working in them. So it seems like we can.
And I think we have consensus that that's the place we would like to
Start.
first. Yeah.
Okay.
We will continue the discussion.
So can we go at that and get some more direction on, specifically, who's not portable?
Well, I would hope that we could, okay, if we do 9 portables, that's what it looks like, but then also if there's others, let's have another scenario, what does that look like? I don't want to only consider, otherwise we're going to take forever, being able to talk about this if we do it so piecemeal, so slow.
Well, I guess, Sarah, I didn't hear piecemeal. What I heard is either by age, but I would also stress that it's probably by site, because you want to address one site, so you're disrupting like one summer, and then you're done potentially too. I mean, there's whether they have 7 there, or they have 10 there, or they have 1 there. If you don't want to go in there
Well, I
twice,
meant
3 times.
piecemeal in terms of the discussion. If they come back, here's what it costs to deal with the portables at Del Rey. Well, wait a minute, I wanted a bigger discussion because, there's others at other schools, Glorietta, and I don't know, if we're at all considering a bond, I would rather have a bigger conversation so we can decide, are we headed that way, or no, maybe we just want to replace these 3 or 9 portables.
I guess the point wasn't to say, to preclude that conversation, but just to say, we have this more urgent need, and then we have this not that it's slightly less urgent,
But longer
desire,
version.
but that would require us to find additional funding for it. So, can we get this specific information with the understanding and idea that we do want to look at what, if we did want to go after a bond, what that would look like. And I hear what you're saying about the timing, because you're right, you want to go out in the new year, so.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think that was helpful. That was a good first step, and a lot of good information. Thanks for doing that legwork.
Also, Maureen just checked, and it's $130,000 a year we do payments for portables.
Yeah, so 130. Okay, thank you, Ed. So our final item on the agenda is discussion item C, the GASB 45 Actuarial Valuation Report.
All right. Government Accounting Standard Board Statement 45, also known as GASB 45, is the accounting and financial reporting by employers for post-employment health benefits other than pensions, which was issued on June 21st, 2004. So as a school district, we're required to, or GASB 45 requires us as a school district to look at our other post-employment benefits, which is referred to as OPEB throughout the report. That it be recognized as an expense and an obligation in the district's financial statements. So you'll see in our interim reports and in our audit, the OPEB liability is spelled out. So we contracted with Dempsey, Filliger, and Associates to perform our most recent study, which was completed on July 13, 2013. The report estimates our retiree health benefit insurance liability as of July 1st, 2012. So it doesn't include any hires after June 30th, 2012. So it's kind of a, in retrospect, where we were in the 11-12 fiscal year. So the current report includes 100 retirees as well as 237 active employees who may become eligible to retire and receive benefits in the future. Our previous report that was completed in July 2010 included 92 retirees and 217 active employees, which is a difference of 28 employees. So when we compare the two reports, there are several factors that caused a decrease in our accrued liability calculation, which is spelled out both in the report and in the agenda bill as well. So, and based on the district of our size, we are required to perform this actuarial every 2 years. And so our actuarial will be doing a new one in 2014-15 as well. When the actuarial is done, it only looks at the employees that are currently employed at that time and does a calculation on those employees. It's a closed review. It doesn't look at turnover or hiring of new employees. It looks at a set number of employees when it does the calculation. So this is an information item only.
Any questions on this item?
So Lauren, do you have any information on like how much either percentage-wise or, I can't speak anymore, or dollar-wise, like how much that unfunded liability tends to go up during these actuarial periods?
What it does is it compares our pay-as-you-go amount to what the accrued liability is.
Is that chart?
Right, and that's kind of what Pauline, our auditor, kind of went into a little bit earlier as well. So the pay-as-you-go is more of a cash basis of accounting, but the ARC is an accrual basis. So the difference between is a portion of the unfunded liability that's reported out. So because we do a pay-as-you-go and we're not looking at what the estimated accrual amount is, that's the difference. So as long as we do the pay-as-you-go, we're not going to gain on that, the ARC percentage, or the ARC amount that's included in the actuarial.
So you're saying the only way you gain on it is if you were creating a trust account?
Right.
And setting aside
Right.
some funds for that?
Right.
But even under this is showing on, well, I have page 6 of them. Page 6 of the report is showing that, for example, in 2014, our pay-as-you-go is 457. This is an estimate because it's based on the fact that it was like a closed system. But then you go down, 3 years and you're over 700,000. Pay-as-you-go.
Right, the assumptions that they use are included towards the back of the report. There's a section on the assumptions that were used in the year-over-year growth. It starts on page 12.
But I mean, in reality, wouldn't your pay-as-you-go, if you weren't looking at it as a closed group, wouldn't you expect your pay-as-you-go to sort of just, I mean, this pay-as-you-go shows it increasing and then decreasing, which you would never really
Right.
expect it to do.
Right.
You would kind of expect it to just keep curving up.
Right, because as these employees age out, we would
Right.
have new employees coming in.
Right. So in other words, this gives you a sense of it, but it doesn't really, really be looking at it ever increasing, or are looking at it ever increasing pay as we go.
Yes,
amount.
yes.
Other questions? Maureen, do you have a sense of what you see? Unfunded liabilities are a huge concern of mine, especially with what's happened with MOFD. Do you have a sense of what other neighboring districts are doing in this type of situation? I know we've got lifetime benefits. I know a lot of districts don't offer that. Are we able to benchmark this, or are we kind of out on our own little island on this one? Or?
And looking at a countywide comparison, it looked like there were probably half of the districts in our county that were in CalPERS, half were not. So there are other alternative type plans, and then of course the retiree benefits are all negotiated, so it would depend on the individual contractor, but beyond 65 coverage would be from district to district.
Have we ever tried to actually compare, that, I mean, I guess you could look at everyone's audits and say, okay, they pay X amount per year. I mean, obviously, every district is a different size and everything, so it's, not an exact comparison, but have we looked at what dollar amount districts are actually paying on, I'm assuming most districts are doing pay-as-you-go.
I haven't compared other districts' post-retirement benefits or post-employment benefits, but I did ask the actuarial firm how many districts that they deal with have an irrevocable trust fund set up, and they said about 6%. So it's not a huge number of, at least of the school districts that this particular firm works with. Because I was curious as to whether they actually had very many districts with irrevocable trusts set up to cover the unfunded liability portion.
So then does logic say that 94% of the districts are pay-as-you-go?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm not missing an option out there?
No.
Okay.
No. Just because you have an irrevocable trust fund doesn't mean you're 100% covered in your liability. You can move towards that and reduce your unfunded liability by setting up an irrevocable trust that meets that ARC amount, or a portion towards the amount that's noted in here as our ARC, because that's the accrued liability. So even if we were to make measurements towards meeting the ARC, our unfunded liability would go down. But we would have to set aside that amount of money into an irrevocable trust in order for that to be recognized by the actuarial study company, for it to be a true reduction in our unfunded liability. So it would just be a special reserve fund that's set up for health benefits, which some districts have, but that doesn't affect a GASB 45 reporting. It would have to be an irrevocable trust to affect the GASB reporting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. My concern is that just as this number goes up and goes up and goes up, obviously it just approaches the general fund and makes it harder for us to spend money on educating kids.
Is it correct that half the Contra Costa County districts are in CalPERS? Because that's surprising to me, because I know most of the state doesn't provide lifetime benefits. Is that just sort of
We did a survey, we collected the data earlier this month, and I was looking at it, and roughly it looked like it was about half.
Is there any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, further discussion? So this for me is a huge issue, and I think I was unaware before this study that we're basically not paying our bills. Because when I look at this, I mean, we've got, we do pay as you go, so we pay $400,000 or $350,000 on a $1.4 million bill. So that's $1 million that we decided not to pay this year that gets pushed forward. And already there's 11 plus million in the bucket that we haven't paid. And really there's 19 million if you want to look at ones that aren't actually approved yet but are on the books. Because I think we should have a plan of how we're gonna fund this. And it's a lot of money.
I think Avalani's, maybe 2 years ago, started with some sort of a trust to, I don't know how funded or trust is, but I think they had those discussions and decided to move towards that, so.
I mean, it seems like the recommendation here, just one of the samples would be we start setting aside an extra $1.2 million a year to begin the process. To begin to pay down, start to pay down some of that principal. That would be a challenge to find in the budget, but it seems like that's our challenge.
Well, like anything that you get behind on paying a bill, you typically don't just have all money to just be paid back all in one chunk. But I would like to see us make an effort to move that way, because this is going to be 20 million before long, and it's going to be 25 million. That's a lot of money. Is there any consensus for exploring a trust fund or something?
What that would look like, and how we would go about it.
Absolutely. I'm in favor of that.
Let's move that away. So items on for discussion only. And next we have communications. Board reports. Next one. Any board reports? Sarah?
Yes, I would like to just say that I've been going to Advocacy Day planning meetings and remind everyone that Advocacy Day is coming up February 7th, it's a Friday, and it will be a good event. And I did bring flyers, I put them over there on the table for the public. And since they're all over there, I decided to pass out the Los Trompas Creek Ledge Team mission statement. The top of it says, "No amount of local fundraising can equal the dollars our schools will receive from the passage of one vital piece of legislation." That's sort of our motto. This has been the mission statement and information on what Ledge Team is. It's been the same for a number of years now, but I just realized I don't know that all of you have it, and I need extra copies for people in the public, because I wanted to encourage everyone to come to Advocacy Day, and so if you want to just pass that down, so that everyone knows what it is. And what's very interesting today, you might have seen in the news that George Miller, our congressman, announced that he will be retiring. Well, he was on our agenda along with Congressman Swalwell. He announced Friday that actually he can't come to our event, so we're hoping to get him by Skype, but we'll see. But aside from that, all of our other local legislators, DeSaulnier, Assemblymember Buchanan, Bonilla, Olson, and Skinner are all scheduled to come, the state legislator panel. So given that George Miller is retiring, that's going to be kind of interesting to see where everyone, how they respond, and this is all about education. And I'll back up, this is hosted by the two ledge teams, which are sponsored by, or not sponsored, but hosted by PTA. And there'll be someone from the state PTA giving an overview of the funding formula, the Common Core, changes in testing and fees and all of those different topics to give an overview for the audience, and then to get our legislators and congressmen to respond. And we're also having a superintendent's panel with our local superintendents, the San Ramon and Acalanes, and one of the superintendents from Orinda. We think Patty Wool, the Walnut Creek superintendent, will probably be able to come, but she hasn't absolutely confirmed, so we can't put that on the agenda yet. But anyway, it'll be a great event, so I hope some of you can come. And that's all I have for the board report. Thank you.
I had a quick report just on the budget committee. Just real fast, this is their audited actuals. The numbers to mention are, one, we overspent by about $100,000 that was in the budget. We still have about $500,000 in undesignated balance. Second, I wrote Moraga next to that $30,000. They every year have contributed. They had bus money from the budget, but now we're going to the new budgeting system with the state. That money goes away. And then the final piece of information. So our costs about $1.7 million a year. Parent contributions about $500,000. So parents contribute about a third, and about 2/3 comes from Measure J. So despite what feels like a high cost of the buses, it's only about a third. So. Any other board reports? Superintendent?
Thank you. Just a short report. What I want to go back to earlier in the meeting today is compliment the business office in Lorraine for the clean audit report. I think it's really good when we get an audit report that we have no findings on. And I think the challenge behind this one was we changed auditors very late after we had started. We still got the audit done in time with a clean report. So that's, I think that speaks really well in terms of the analysis. There is, I think we just talked about the board member, not the board member, sorry, the board opportunity to look at the state budget. And there's a meeting coming up on the 22nd, county office. So if you're interested in that, I can get you some information in case you didn't get that. And that's it.
Good. Okay. Any other future agenda items that was proposed?
I would like to raise one other issue. Given that last week Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education, announced this whole new guidelines for school climate, I think it would be a good idea, even though we have different issues than some districts, but I think it would be a good idea for us to be able to discuss school climate in terms of positive steps to discipline and in our schools locally. And I also would like us, since I'm not aware of what the principal evaluation, what principles are the criteria for the principal evaluation, I think school climate and discipline policies and the steps should be part of that, and I would like to be able to have a discussion on the principal evaluation criteria with that in mind.
I'd like to have as a future agenda item, taking a look at our board policy 91